Chapter 542. It had been half a month since the battle between Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao at the imperial stage. During this time, Long Yunxiao had not returned to the imperial palace, nor had he appeared in public. Many people guessed that he must have been seriously injured and was still recovering in seclusion. Only Ji Tianqing knew that although Long Yunxiao's injuries were not light, it was not to the extent that he had to recuperate in seclusion for half a month. However, he had not mentioned anything about the imperial concubine selection in the past half a month. In the depths of his heart, he had silently agreed that Long Yunxiao was a gentleman. He would not go back on his words and choose Yunyao as his imperial concubine. However, there had to be a conclusion to this matter. Before Long Yunxiao officially chose his imperial concubine, anything could happen. There were still many unknown variables. Therefore, after Ji Tianqing received the invitation, he had to go to the imperial palace to watch the ceremony no matter what. He had to see Long Yunxiao choose his imperial concubine with his own eyes before he could truly be at ease. After leaving the room, Ji Tianqing summoned Yan, Ji Ku, and Qian Yu. He solemnly instructed them. In 3 days, Long Yunxiao will choose his imperial concubine at the Apocalypse Pagoda. I have to go to the imperial palace personally. In the next few days, the 3 of you will stay in Tianqing Palace. Don't go out if there's nothing important. If there's anything, wait for me to come back. After that, Ji Tianqing left Tianqing Palace alone and flew towards the imperial palace's exit. He flapped his golden wings and flew across the vast sea of clouds like a shooting star. He crossed one mountain after another. After about 2 hours, he was about to reach the imperial palace's exit. Only then did he realize that there were a few imperial princes in the sky nearby. They were also flying towards the exit. When he saw that those imperial princes were all humans, he immediately frowned and thought to himself, the imperial princes rarely show themselves. They are either cultivating in seclusion in their cave abodes or training in the outside world. Why did so many human imperial princes appear at the same time today and leave the imperial palace? Could it be that they also received Long Yunxiao's invitation and are going to the imperial palace to watch the ceremony? Just as he was secretly guessing, a kind voice suddenly called out from behind him. Junior brother Ji, please wait. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to this voice. He did not need to turn around to know that the person who spoke was Ling Yisan. As expected, he stopped in the sky and turned around to look behind him. He saw Ling Yichong flying over at lightning speed. Shua! Ling Yi flew to Ji Tianqing's side and stopped. With a face full of smiles, he cupped his hands in greeting. Junior brother Ji, where are you going? If I'm not wrong, you should also be going to the imperial court, right? Ji Tianqing could tell that Ling Yichen had a cheerful and passionate personality. For some reason, Ling Yichen seemed to be trying to get close to him on purpose. That was why he took the initiative to greet him. Fortunately, when Ling Yi was trying to worm his way into being friends with him, his expression revealed some sincerity, unlike Murong Lingfeng's hypocrisy. Therefore, Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's right, I'm going to the imperial court to observe the ceremony." Why, is senior brother Ling also going to the imperial court? Ling Yichong immediately smiled. He took out a sandalwood box from his spatial ring and said, what a coincidence. The emperor also sent me an invitation, inviting me to observe the ceremony. Yes, if I'm not wrong, the emperor might have sent invitations to the dozen or so princes of the human race. As he spoke, he pointed at the princes in the sky not far away. There were a total of 7 princes of the human race. 3 of them were moving alone, while the other 4 were moving in groups. Ji Tianqing glanced at the princes and said with a calm expression, "The emperor's selection of heavenly concubines is of great importance. It's only right for him to invite our princes to observe the ceremony. It's still very far from Central State City to the imperial court. I'm afraid of wasting time, so I'll take my leave first." With that, Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bid farewell to Ling Yichong. He was about to turn and leave. However, Ling Yichong caught up with him again and said with a smile, "Junior brother Ji, if I'm not wrong, you probably haven't been to the imperial court yet, right? It'll take at least 2 days to travel from Central State City to the imperial court. If you're not familiar with the route, it'll be hard to avoid wasting time and affecting the ceremony. Since we're brothers and we're going to the imperial court to observe the ceremony together, why don't we travel together? I'll lead the way for you." Ji Tianqing saw how enthusiastic he was and subconsciously wanted to reject him. However, he suddenly thought of something and swallowed his rejection. He nodded and said, "That's good too. Then I'll have to trouble you, senior brother Ling." Ling Yichong was a little surprised to see Ji Tianqing agree so readily. This guy. He was cold to me before and seemed to be on guard against me. Why did he agree so readily today?" Although Ling Yichong was puzzled, he didn't show it on his face and didn't show any abnormalities. "Junior brother Ji is too polite. We brothers should take care of each other." He smiled and said politely. Ji Tianqing only nodded and didn't say anything else. After that, the two of them traveled together and rushed to the exit of the imperial residence. They then left the imperial residence together. Swoosh! With a flash of light, Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichong's figures appeared in the divine steel forest at the same time. Ji Tianqing was about to fly up into the sky, but Ling Yichong pulled him back and said seriously, "Junior brother Ji, for safety's sake, it's better for us to change our appearance before we travel. I'm not famous in the first place, so I'm not afraid of others seeing through my identity. However, junior brother Ji, you're now an influential figure in Central State City. Who knows how many people are paying attention to you? It's better for you to be more cautious." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment before he smiled and nodded. "Senior brother Ling is still the most considerate. Then we'll do as you say to avoid some unnecessary trouble." Thus, he used a meticulous technique to control the muscles and nerves on his face, slightly changing the outline and appearance of his facial features. Although, on the surface, his appearance didn't seem to have changed much. However, his facial features and appearance had changed. Even if Yan and Ji Ku saw him, it would be hard for them to recognize him at first glance. After changing his appearance, Ji Tianqing's body flashed with a golden light. The white robe he wore disappeared into thin air and turned into a long, sapphire blue robe. In this way, he changed from a handsome and mighty heaven's prime expert, a noble imperial prince, to an ordinary noble young master in the mortal world. After changing his appearance, he looked at Ling Yichong beside him and found that Ling Yichong had also changed his appearance. He was dressed as a rich young master like him. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then, they passed through the divine steel forest like a gust of wind and rushed towards the southern city gate of Central State City. Not long after the two of them left, several human imperial princes came out of the imperial residence one after another. However, these princes swaggered into the sky and flew towards the south at lightning speed. Chapter 543. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen ran as fast as the wind in Central State City. On the surface, they looked like ordinary rich young masters in the city, with only the strength of the Origin Core realm. No one would have thought that they were both powerhouses of the divine Origin realm, and were unparalleled imperial princes. However, while they were rushing, they noticed that there were divine Origin realm powerhouses flying over their heads. They could recognize at a glance that those figures that were as fast as flowing light were the imperial princes of the human race who came out of the monarch mansion. Many commoners and martial practitioners in the city were alarmed by those imperial princes. They all looked up at the sky and discussed in groups of 3 to 5. Ling Yichen smiled and said to Ji Tianqing, "Those fellows didn't hide their identities at all. Flying over so openly will definitely attract the attention and discussion of the commoners. Ji Tianqing nodded and didn't say anything. However, he thought to himself, if it's just being noticed and discussed by the commoners, then it's nothing. When I was in the monarch mansion, there were people who wanted to sneak into Tianqing Palace to assassinate me. Now that I'm out of the monarch mansion, those who want to deal with me won't let go of this opportunity. It was because he understood this that he listened to Ling Yichen's advice and changed his appearance. However, he was secretly puzzled. Why did Ling Yichen take the initiative to remind me to change my appearance? Does he know something? It'll take 2 days to get to the imperial court. I'll take this opportunity to observe this person. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen passed through the South City Gate and left Central State City. After leaving Central State City, there were endless mountains and rivers outside the city. There were very few people. It was only then that Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen flew high into the sky, flying south as fast as flowing light. The two of them flew high in the sky, crossing thousands of mountains and rivers along the way. They also passed by many villages and cities. During the journey, Ji Tianqing remained silent, secretly observing Ling Yichen. Ling Yichen didn't do anything out of the ordinary. As he flew, he was vigilant of his surroundings. He would occasionally chat with Ji Tianqing, but it was all about the monarch mansion. Unknowingly, a day had passed. In the evening, Ji Tianqing and Ling Yi had flown for an entire day. They had used up a lot of their true essence, so they were a little tired and sleepy. Thus, the two of them landed on the peak of a tall mountain and stopped to circulate their qi to regulate their breathing. This towering mountain was over 10,000 feet tall, surrounded by undulating mountain ranges and a vast, dark green primitive forest. The mountain peak beneath their feet was naturally covered by a lush forest. There were towering trees all around, and the ground was covered with waist-high weeds and thorny bushes. Ji Tianqing found a large millstone in the woods and set up a defensive formation around the large stone. Then, he sat on the large stone and circulated his energy to regulate his breathing. Ling Yi found a towering tree 100 meters away from him and sat on the treetop to meditate and cultivate. As the sun set, the sky darkened. Night was about to fall. Ling Yi sat on the treetop and meditated quietly for 2 hours. He used up 2 spirit stones and recovered most of his qi. He temporarily ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. His gaze passed through the lush foliage and looked at Ji Tianqing 100 meters away. Seeing Ji Tianqing circulating his qi to regulate his breathing without any distractions, as if he wasn't on guard against everything around him, he couldn't help but frown. Sigh. Outside of Central State City, his situation must be even more dangerous. Why does he seem to be completely unaware? Ling Yi muttered in his heart, feeling an inexplicable sense of worry. However, when he thought about it again, he felt that something was wrong. Ji Tianqing came from a humble background, but he was able to walk step by step until today. After experiencing so many dangers and crises, he can still live safe and sound. He's definitely not a reckless and careless person. Thinking like this, he felt a little more at ease. Then, he withdrew his gaze from observing Ji Tianqing and quietly released his spiritual sense to explore in all directions. His spiritual sense soundlessly enveloped a radius of 400 meters, monitoring the surrounding pitch-black night. Whether it was the poisonous insects hiding in the forest or the snakes and ants hiding underground, none of them could escape his spiritual senses probing. Seeing that the surroundings were quiet and that there were no abnormalities, Ling Yi felt relieved. However, at this moment, in the sky above the mountain peak, a dazzling cold light suddenly lit up and shot down like lightning. Swoosh! It was a 2-meter-long blue light that cut through the night like a meteor. In the blink of an eye, it arrived above the forest and pierced towards Ji Tianqing's head. Ling Yi immediately sensed that something was wrong. Looking carefully, he discovered that there was an icy blue flying knife the length of a chopstick in the 2-meter-long blue light. Although the flying knife wasn't big, it was a heaven origin grade treasure. It was indestructible and contained a terrifying power that could pierce through everything. The 2-meter-long blue light was actually the tail flame of the flying dagger. Junior Marshal Brother G, be careful. Ling Yi didn't have time to think. He immediately used his spiritual sense to warn Ji Tianqing. Almost as soon as his voice fell, Ji Tianqing, who was circulating and adjusting his breath, suddenly opened his eyes. At that moment, a cold killing intent flashed in Ji Tianqing's eyes. Like a cold sword light, it tore through the night in front of him. Swoosh! In the nick of time, a dark sword appeared in his left hand. His right hand held the hilt and pulled out the sword with a clang. Dragon soars from the 9th heaven. The moment the sword was unsheathed, a 10-meter-long cold sword light lit up and condensed into the shadow of a divine dragon. Roar! The divine dragon sword shadow let out a dragon's roar and slashed towards the night sky from below to meet the icy blue flying knife head-on. In a split second, the divine dragon sword shadow fiercely slashed at the icy blue flying knife. The sound of metal clashing against metal rang out. Clang! The 2-meter-long blue flame was shattered in an instant, and the heaven origin level icy blue flying dagger was sent flying back. The icy blue flying knife lost its support and tumbled towards the night sky in the distance. At this moment, a blue figure cut through the night sky and reached out to catch the icy blue flying knife. It was a thin figure wearing a blue robe with a veil over his face. His entire body was emitting an icy blue cold air. He stared at Ji Tianqing with cold eyes. His right hand surged with a majestic true essence and infused it into the icy blue flying knife. He shook his hand and threw the flying knife at Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! The icy blue flying knife's power once again soared to the limit. It tore through the night sky and shot towards Ji Tianqing with a 2-meter-long icy blue tail flame. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. He stared at the blue-robed assassin in the night sky and sneered. Humph! Finally willing to show yourself? At the same time, Ling Yi flew towards Ji Tianqing with a black sword in his hand. He wanted to help him deal with the blue-robed assassin. Chapter 544. That powerful and violent flaming sword beam instantly tore through the dark night and went straight for Ling Yichong. He turned his head and saw a tall and sturdy black figure appear in the dark forest. It was a tall and sturdy man in black. He held a sword that flashed with cold light in his hand and exuded a frightening murderous aura. Ling Yi could no longer help Ji Tianqing. He could only wave his black sword and slash out 3 sword rays to block the incoming flaming sword ray. Bang bang bang. The 4 sword rays collided with each other fiercely and exploded with a few muffled noises that echoed in the night sky. The flaming sword ray was defeated and turned into flames that covered the sky and earth, pouring down in torrents in the dark forest. The man in black rushed to the front of Ling Yi and swung his sword again, sending out several dazzling cold lights. A murderous intent flashed through Ling Yi's eyes. He hurriedly used his sword arts and fought with his opponent. At the same time, Ji Tianqing, who was 100 meters away, swung his sword again and sent the icy blue flying dagger flying. His figure flashed and flew into the night sky. He turned into a golden flowing light and took the initiative to attack the blue-robed assassin. The blue-robed assassin furrowed his brows. His eyes were filled with anger. He shouted in a low voice, "You dare to take the initiative to counterattack? You're courting death." He shouted in a low voice. A light flashed in his palm and a golden saber appeared out of thin air. Xian Bing slash. The blue-robed assassin held the saber with both hands and slashed out 36 icy blue saber rays. They were like countless icicles that stabbed at Ji Tianqing fiercely. The saber rays emitted a bone-chilling cold air that instantly enveloped a radius of several hundred meters. It made half of the mountain peak as cold as ice and snow. The air seemed to be frozen as well. Ji Tianqing was surrounded by dozens of saber rays. His body was frozen stiff by the bone-chilling cold air. His blood seemed to have solidified. However, he had already put away the black dragon sword. He activated the sword embryo's power and released a dazzling flaming sword. Crimson Dragon Flash. The 20-meter-long flaming sword carried an incomparably violent power and fiercely blasted toward the blue-robed assassin. The crimson flames condensed into a flaming divine dragon, exuding unparalleled heat and flame waves that swept in all directions. Suddenly, the dark night sky was illuminated with a dark red color, as if half of the sky was burning. The cold air that had shrouded half of the mountain peak was also dispelled. The 36 icy blue blade auras also quickly melted under the high temperature, their power greatly reduced. Pang pang pang. The huge flaming sword and the icy saber collided with a loud bang, causing a series of loud and muffled sounds to resound fiercely in the night sky. All of the cold blade lights were shattered into pieces of ice crystals that blotted out the sky, and were burned into water vapor by the flame and the high temperature. Instantly, the night sky was filled with water vapor. The blue-robed assassin clearly hadn't expected Ji Tianqing's strength to be so tyrannical, easily dispelling his attack. When the water mist that filled the sky surged, Ji Tianqing had already passed through the water mist as fast as lightning, charging towards him. The blue-robed assassin immediately sensed that something was wrong, and hurriedly retreated into the distance. His left hand emitted a dazzling icy blue brilliance, and 9 icy blue flying daggers immediately appeared in his palm, releasing a bone-chilling blade aura. The 9 flying daggers were all Heaven Origin level treasures, and they were a set of flying daggers in a chain. They could also form a dagger array, containing hundreds of changes and infinite power. 100 Transformation Divine Dagger. The blue-robed assassin growled with a murderous aura. He suddenly waved his hand and sent out 9 flying daggers, which turned into 9 icy blue lights that shot towards Ji Tianqing like meteors. The 9 icy blue lights scattered, covering the sky within a kilometer radius, and immediately formed a dagger array. The area within a kilometer radius was sealed by the invisible power of the array. The fierce and violent blade aura shuttled back and forth within the dagger array, crisscrossing and strangling. Ji Tianqing had just passed through the water mist and was about to rush towards the blue-robed assassin when he was caught in the dagger array. 9 icy blue blade lights whooshed over, piercing through the night sky and attacking his vital parts from all directions. At this critical moment, he had no time to dodge or counterattack, and could only use his golden wings to block. Golden Rock Wings. The golden wings transformed from Kenshin's battle robe instantly closed, and Ji Tianqing's body was enveloped. The 9 icy blue daggers exploded with the most violent power, and slashed at him fiercely, but they were all blocked by the golden wings. Bang bang bang. In a series of muffled sounds, the icy blue daggers were all shattered, revealing the 9 flying daggers, which were all knocked back. However, the 9 flying daggers drew a few arcs in the night sky, and immediately lit up with icy blue lights, recovering their strength. The flying daggers flew in circles in the night sky, waiting for an opportunity to strike, and could launch another attack at any time. Ji Tianqing was knocked back 100 steps before he could stop. He spread his golden wings, and stared at the 9 icy blue daggers with a cold smile. Dagger array? Interesting. The blue-robed assassin looked at Ji Tianqing coldly. Seeing that there was not a single wound on his body, he frowned. This hateful brat can actually block my 100 transformation dagger? The information is wrong. This brat's combat ability is comparable to the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage. He definitely has not just reached Sky Origin stage. The blue-robed assassin thought that tonight was the best opportunity for assassination. With his strength, he could easily kill Ji Tianqing, who had just reached Sky Origin stage. However, after he showed up, he had exchanged a few blows with Ji Tianqing, but he could not gain the slightest advantage. While he was furious, he had no choice but to take Ji Tianqing's strength seriously and treat him seriously. He was no longer in a hurry to attack, but secretly performed a secret technique to increase the power of the dagger array, and suppressed Ji Tianqing fiercely. "I'll trap this brat with the dagger array first, then find a chance to kill him together," the blue-robed assassin thought, and subconsciously turned his head to look at the eastern night sky. In the night sky thousands of meters away from him, the black-robed man was fighting fiercely with Ling Yichuan. Both of them unleashed their strongest strength, swinging their swords and slashing out enormous sword auras that covered the sky, and collided fiercely with each other. Bang bang bang. The muffled sounds kept exploding, and spread far in the night sky. One after another, the sword auras shattered with a bang, creating a violent and devastating shockwave that spread in all directions like a hurricane. The mountain peaks around the two, and the primitive forest under their feet, were all devastated by the violent shockwave. Many enormous ravines and pits appeared. Obviously, the black-robed man and Ling Yichuan were evenly matched in strength. It would be difficult to determine the winner in a short time. The blue-robed assassin was still hoping that the black-robed man would finish off Ling Yichuan as soon as possible, and join forces with him to kill Ji Tianqing. Now it seemed that the black-robed man could not be counted on. If he wanted to kill Ji Tianqing, he could only rely on himself. The blue-robed assassin turned back to look at Ji Tianqing. He waved his hand and shot out streaks of icy blue light into the dagger array. The power of the dagger array suddenly increased, releasing thousands of icy blue dagger lights that shot toward Ji Tianqing like a rain of arrows. Ji Tianqing dodged and blocked the attacks, but his eyes were shining with wisdom and calmness. He was observing the dagger array, and quickly looking for a flaw in the dagger array. After a short 10 breaths, a bright light suddenly flashed through his eyes, and a cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Chapter 545. Without a doubt, the blue-robed assassin's sword array was not even worth mentioning in front of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing only used 10 breaths of time to see the flaws and weaknesses of the sword array. As soon as he finished speaking, he activated all of his power, and his whole body ignited with a monstrous golden flame. White Tiger Sacred Sword. Following Ji Tianqing's shout, his body merged with the monstrous golden flame and turned into a 20-meter-long golden sword. Kill. The golden flame around the golden sword condensed into a sacred white tiger, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It was incomparably ferocious. The white tiger sacred sword emitted a terrifying killing intent that could destroy heaven and earth. With an unstoppable momentum, it fiercely charged towards the night sky on the left. Although this sword was not aimed at the blue-robed assassin, but at the empty night sky, it seemed a little baffling. However, when the blue-robed assassin saw this unparalleled killing sword, his expression changed drastically. His eyes revealed a deep shock. How could he see the flaws of the sword array in such a short time? The blue-robed assassin boasted of his great attainments in array Dao. Combining array Dao and sword arts to form a sword array was his most prized skill. However, he did not dare to believe that the 100 transformation sword array, which he relied on to become famous, could be seen through so easily by Ji Tianqing. At the critical moment, he hurriedly controlled the sword array, wanting to operate the array to hide the flaws and weaknesses of the sword array. However, it was all too late. Boom! The white tiger sacred sword was like a meteor streaking across the night sky. It instantly pierced the flaw of the sword array, and an earth-shattering explosion erupted. It lit up with an overwhelming icy blue light. Under the impact of the unparalleled sharpness, a huge hole was instantly blasted open in the 100 transformation sword array. A huge gap was torn open. The 100 transformation sword array was heavily damaged and immediately collapsed. The 9 icy blue flying daggers lost their support and instantly became dim. They fell from the sky powerlessly. However, the blue-robed assassin did not have time to care about the 9 flying daggers. He stared at the white tiger sacred sword in fear and desperately retreated. This was because after the White Tiger sacred sword shattered the saber formation, its power was still undiminished as it ruthlessly charged towards him. The White Tiger sacred sword had locked onto his aura. No matter where he ran or how he changed directions, he would not be able to escape the White Tiger sacred sword's pursuit. Shua! In the blink of an eye, the White Tiger sacred sword streaked across the night sky and struck the blue-robed assassin, submerging his figure. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the blue-robed assassin was sent flying, blood spurting from his mouth. His figure drew an arc in the night sky and fell into the valley 1,000 meters away. The White Tiger sacred sword also dissipated, and Ji Tianqing's figure appeared, standing proudly in the night sky. He stared at the blue-robed assassin falling from the sky and murmured to himself, "Is this an ordinary sky origin stage cultivator? He is even weaker than Long Yunxiao, who is at the second level of sky origin stage." Even though he still didn't know the identity of the blue-robed assassin. However, there was one thing that he was certain of. The blue-robed assassin was definitely not a crown prince from the monarch mansion. After all, the crown princes who could enter the monarch mansion were all peerless geniuses. They were outstanding cultivators with all kinds of secret skills. For example, Long Yunxiao, who was at the second level of Sky Origin stage, could easily defeat an ordinary Sky Origin stage cultivator. Every crown prince was a genius cultivator who could challenge cultivators who were at a higher level than them. At this moment, the blue-robed assassin who was about to fall into the valley flew back to the sky with a flash of cold light. Shua! The blue-robed assassin flew back to the sky and stood 1,000 meters away from Ji Tianqing. He stared at Ji Tianqing with hatred in his eyes. There was a bowl-sized hole in his abdomen. Blood was gushing out from the hole. Blood was also flowing out from his nose and mouth, dripping onto his blue robe. "Kid, I have underestimated you. However, you will still die tonight." The blue-robed assassin shouted with a ferocious face. His hoarse voice was filled with hatred and killing intent. He held his saber with both hands, and his body was burning with an icy blue flame. He exploded with a terrifying aura. 5 Qis converge. He did not hesitate to use 70% of his true origin to use this secret skill, which doubled his combat power in a short period of time. Suddenly, the blue-robed assassin's body expanded, and the saber in his hand shone with a dazzling cold light. Hurricane Ice Dragon Slash. He roared with a thunderous voice. He held his saber with both hands and slashed at Ji Tianqing with all his might. Shua! A 30-meter-long Frost Divine Dragon appeared. The Frost Divine Dragon formed by the saber radiance shone with a dazzling icy blue light, illuminating the night sky. It was emitting a bone-chilling cold that covered the entire sky above the mountain. The Frost Divine Dragon stretched out its claws and opened its mouth. It rushed toward Ji Tianqing with an icy hurricane that swept across the sky. Ji Tianqing's aura was locked. He could not dodge or run away. He could only block or fight back. At this critical moment, he raised his left arm without hesitation and activated the red flame primordial fire. Burning Sky Palm. His magma-like left arm spewed out endless red flame primordial fire. It condensed into a giant flaming palm that covered the sky and blasted toward the Frost Divine Dragon. At that moment, the night sky within a radius of dozens of miles was illuminated red by the boundless red flame. Half of the sky was burning. Boom! The giant flaming palm collided with the Frost Divine Dragon, and there was a loud explosion that shook the 9 heavens. An invisible sound wave exploded, shaking the mountains and the ground within a radius of 50 miles. The mighty Frost Divine Dragon was smashed into pieces by the giant flaming palm, turning into thousands of ice crystal fragments. Countless ice crystal fragments were engulfed by the monstrous flames and evaporated into nothingness. They dissipated in the blink of an eye. Immediately after, the giant flaming palm blasted the blue-robed assassin, turning him into charred pieces. The giant flaming palm wrapped around his corpse and blasted a 1,000-foot mountain 5 miles away. With a loud boom, the 1,000-foot mountain was shattered on the spot, turning into scorched ruins. Endless dust and gravel mixed with the flames rushed into the sky, covering a radius of dozens of miles. The earth and mountains around the ruins trembled violently, and huge ravines appeared on the ground. The surging red flame exploded, drowning the dozens of nearby mountains and turning them into a boundless sea of fire. Such an earth-shattering commotion lasted for a full quarter of an hour. The monstrous fire burned for a long time before gradually dissipating. After a long time, when the flames that covered the sky dissipated, Ji Tianqing's figure was revealed. He stood in the sky unscathed, gazing at the scorched ruins 5 miles away, and muttered regretfully. "Unfortunately, that guy has been blasted into pieces. I can't figure out his identity." At this time, Ling Yi flew over like a stream of light and landed beside him. When Ling Yichen saw that the surrounding mountain peaks had shattered and that the area of several dozen miles had turned into scorched earth and ruins, his face was instantly filled with shock. Chapter 546. A Sky Origin Stage cultivator indeed had the power to split mountains and rivers. However, Ji Tianqing's giant flame palm was able to turn a radius of several dozen miles into a sea of fire and scorched earth. It was truly terrifying. Even if Ling Yichen's strength was 3 levels higher than his, he still couldn't do it. He witnessed the power of the burning sky palm with his own eyes. How could he not be shocked and horrified? However, Ji Tianqing's expression was indifferent. His eyes were as calm as ever. He turned his head to look at Ling Yichen beside him and asked, "Senior brother Ling, where's that black-clothed man?" Ling Yichen was startled for a moment. He revealed an embarrassed smile and explained, "That black-clothed assassin's strength has reached the 4th level of Sky Origin Stage. He's on par with me. I fought with him for more than 10 moves, but it was still difficult to determine the victor. Although I had the upper hand, it was still very difficult to defeat him in a short period of time. It just so happened that you used that burning sky palm. Its power was too terrifying." Both the black-clothed man and I hurriedly dodged. In the chaos, the black-clothed man saw that the situation wasn't good and fled. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a solemn expression, "In that case, we still can't figure out who sent the 2 assassins even though we fought with them." A trace of self-blame flashed through Ling Yichen's eyes. He hurriedly comforted him, "Junior brother Ji, I've already memorized the black-clothed man's aura. If I meet him again, I'll definitely be able to recognize him." That's good too." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a calm tone, "Senior brother Ling, one assassin is dead, and the other has escaped. The other party probably won't make any more moves tonight. Let's leave this place first and find a safe place to rest for a while." Ling Yichen naturally nodded in agreement. He followed him into the night sky and continued to fly towards the south. The 2 of them flew through the night sky as fast as lightning, chatting with each other through spiritual sense as they hurried along. Ji Tianqing looked calm on the surface, but he was probing Ling Yichen indirectly. He asked, "Senior brother Ling, you seem to have guessed that there were assassins who wanted to assassinate us?" Ling Yichen was startled for a moment before he explained with a smile, "Not us, but you. I'm alone, I don't have any enemies. On the other hand, Junior Marshal brother Ji, you've been in the limelight recently. You'll definitely attract the attention of various forces. There were as many experts as there were clouds in the central continent. Various powerful forces emerged one after another. The relationships between them were inextricably linked and intertwined. It was very complicated. Perhaps you haven't done anything, but you've already offended someone unknowingly, hindering the development and plans of some forces. Therefore, it is inevitable that there will be people who want to kill you in the cradle." Ling Yichen's words seemed to have said a lot, but he did not say anything clearly. It was ambiguous and unclear. However, Ji Tianqing understood that Ling Yichen was reminding him to be careful. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Senior brother Ling, why did you save me in such a dangerous situation? You and I are just acquaintances. You don't have to risk your life for me." Ling Yichen frowned as he looked at him, his tone disappointed as he said, "Junior brother Ji, we're both princes of the Clear Cloud Divine Masters sect, so we're fellow brothers. I really didn't expect that I would treat you as my junior brother, but you would treat me as an outsider. Sigh. If I knew you were thinking like this, I would have decisively run away just now and left you alone. I would have left you to fend for yourself." As he said this, he even shook his head gloomily, an expression of disappointment on his face. Ji Tianqing looked at him from the side. Unable to see through his true thoughts, he could only temporarily suppress the guesses in his heart. "Senior brother Ling, you've misunderstood. What I mean is that you could have stayed out of this. There was no need for you to risk your life to save me. Since you've acted righteously and saved me, I'm naturally grateful to you and have to say thank you." Ling Yichen glanced at him, looking like he was considering it again. "If you want to thank me, you can't just say it. Let's see how you perform in the future." Ji Tianqing only smiled and did not say anything else. An hour later, the two of them flew 300 kilometers away and entered an ancient city. The two of them stayed in a luxurious inn and rested for a few hours. After daybreak, the two of them recovered their physical strength and true essence. They left the inn and continued to rush south. For the rest of the day, the two of them sped through the sky. They did not encounter any more dangers or ambushes along the way. This evening, Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen finally entered the sky-connecting mountain range and arrived at the foot of heaven-reaching peak. The sun was setting in the west. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on heaven-reaching peak, causing the entire peak to be covered in a layer of faint golden light. It appeared even more sacred and dignified. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen stood at the plaza at the foot of the mountain, sizing up this towering peak. They saw that there were dozens of statues that were 100 meters tall around the plaza that was 1,000 meters in radius. These statues were of the sages and experts of the human race. They were placed on the plaza for the people of the human race to worship. At the end of the plaza, there was a wide black stone divine path that extended along the steep mountain slope to the mountainside. Many palaces and buildings were built on the slopes on both sides of the divine path, exuding an ancient aura. Moreover, every 100 steps on the divine path, there was an imperial court imperial guard wearing silver armor and holding a long halberd. These imperial court imperial guards were all dignified and dignified. They stood like stone statues and did not move at all, appearing extremely solemn and respectful. Going up the divine path, they reached halfway up the mountain, where the white clouds and mist covered everything. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen looked up at heaven-reaching peak, revealing a respectful and solemn expression. Ling Yichen said with a solemn expression, "Junior brother Ji, this giant peak is the sacred land of the human race, heaven-reaching peak. The imperial court is located at the peak of heaven-reaching peak. This should be your first time in the imperial court, right? Later, you must properly admire the scenery of heaven-reaching peak." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a calm expression, "Let's go up." Then, he and Ling Yichen returned to their original appearances, becoming the dignified and extraordinary imperial princes. The two of them crossed the wide plaza and stepped onto the divine path paved with black stone, walking towards the mountainside. The consort selection ceremony was tomorrow. It was still early, so the two of them were not in a hurry. They walked towards the mountainside while admiring the scenery along the way. Heaven-reaching peak was surrounded by lush green mountain ranges. Numerous towering mountains were situated in the endless mountain range, their original appearance covered by thick white clouds and fog. Not long after, Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen reached the mountainside and arrived at a towering gate. There were many imperial guards guarding the gate. Only those who received an invitation could cross the gate and ascend to the mountaintop to watch the ceremony. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen took out their invitations and handed them to the Imperial Guard captain for inspection before they were allowed to enter. The two of them crossed the gate and continued to climb up the mountain along the solemn black divine path. The buildings above the mountainside were shrouded in white clouds and were faintly discernible. The two of them climbed the mountain in the clouds and enjoyed the scenery along the way. Chapter 547. When night fell, Ji Tianqing and Ling Yi climbed to the peak of the mountain. On the 10,000-meter-high peak, the wind was biting cold, and the clouds were surging. Several magnificent palaces stood on the peak of the mountain, as if they had existed since ancient times, exuding a majestic and solemn aura. 3 palaces, 9 halls, and 18 courtyards formed the holy land of the human race, the imperial court. These palaces and courtyards were very vast and luxurious, not like the residences of humans, but more like the palaces of the gods in heaven. Ji Tianqing stood on the vast square in front of the palace, staring at the palace of heaven and earth across the square, and felt the sacred aura coming from it. He observed silently for a while, and could vaguely see that the palaces and courtyards in the imperial court were arranged in a special pattern and position. It contained the changes and mysteries of heaven and earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars. The entire imperial court sat on heaven-reaching peak, with the domineering aura of an emperor looking down on heaven and earth, and the majesty of a god looking down on all living things. Even in the dark night, the entire imperial court flashed with golden light, as dazzling as the sun. On the huge square in front of the palace, there were rows of imperial court guards in silver armor standing around. Many luxuriously dressed and dignified human experts and powerhouses were walking through the square in groups, toward the side palace of the palace of heaven and earth. All the guests who had received the invitation and came to watch the ceremony were gathered in the side palace, and there were bursts of laughter and cheers. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yi followed the guests who had just climbed to the peak, and walked to the side palace at a moderate pace. When the two entered the side palace, they saw that there were hundreds of guests gathered in the brightly lit main hall. These dignified and powerful guests were all powerhouses or leaders of the human race's major forces. Everyone was holding wine cups, and gathered in groups of 3 to 5, either exchanging greetings or chatting enthusiastically. The long tables around the hall were piled high with fine wine and delicacies for the guests to take as they pleased. The air was filled with the fragrance of food, spirit fruits, and wine. To the powerhouses of the human race, it was an extremely honorable thing to be able to come to the imperial court to watch the ceremony. Not only would they be able to broaden their horizons, but they would also be able to interact and get to know many other experts of the same path. Therefore, many of the guests cherished this rare opportunity and went around chatting with others. When Ji Tianqing and Ling Yicheng walked into the main hall, many guests noticed them and turned their heads to look at them in surprise. It wasn't strange that a large number of Sky Origin stage cultivators had gathered in the imperial court tonight. However, it was rare to see 2 Sky Origin stage cultivators as young as them. Moreover, both of them had dignified appearances, and their auras were noble and dignified. With a single glance, one could tell that they were genius experts from top forces. Instantly, many people guessed their identities. Their expressions changed slightly, revealing looks of awe and envy. An Imperial Guard captain in golden armor quickly walked in front of the two of them. The guard captain bowed to the two of them and asked respectfully, "May I ask if the two of you are from the Imperial residence?" "That's right." "Yes." Ji Tianqing and Ling Yicheng both nodded in acknowledgement. The guard captain hurriedly pointed to the stairs on the left side of the main hall and said respectfully, "His Majesty the Emperor has instructed to invite the 2 princes to rest on the 2nd floor." Ji Tianqing and Ling Yicheng passed through the spacious main hall and walked towards the stairs. Many people in the main hall saw this scene and looked at the two of them with complicated eyes and expressions. They began to discuss in low voices. The guests who are qualified to go to the second floor seem to be the princes of the imperial residence, right? I guessed right. Those two are indeed the princes. No wonder their auras are so extraordinary. More than a dozen princes went upstairs earlier. Now that two more have come, almost all the princes of the human race are here, right? To be able to see so many princes in this trip to the imperial court to watch the ceremony, this trip is really worth it. Many human powerhouses looked at Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichong with eyes full of envy and admiration. Their voices were also somewhat excited and emotional. After a while, Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichong went up to the second floor and entered a brightly lit but quiet and elegant living room. This living room was much smaller than the main hall on the first floor, but the decorations were more exquisite and luxurious. Obviously, it was used to entertain truly important guests. In the middle of the main hall, there was a huge table that was 20 meters long and more than 3 meters wide. On top of it were delicacies and fine wine. More than a dozen human princes were gathered in groups of 3 to 5. They held wine glasses in their hands and whispered to each other about something. Unlike the guests in the main hall on the first floor, these princes were arrogant, confident, and reserved. Even if they were gathered together with people who were familiar with each other, they would not talk loudly or laugh. The prince's words and actions were full of noble demeanor. When Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichong entered the living room, more than a dozen princes turned their heads to look at the two of them. Some of the princes who knew them nodded slightly to greet the two of them. As for the princes who were not familiar with them, they glanced at the two of them indifferently before looking away and no longer paying attention to them. Ji Tianqing did not care about the prince's gazes. He picked up a glass of spirit wine from the table and walked to the window. Ling Yichong followed him. The two of them stood by the window with wine glasses in their hands. They enjoyed the cool night breeze and admired the night view outside the window while talking to each other softly. At this moment, Ji Tianqing saw that two princes were already standing by the two windows not far away. The two of them did not belong to the same group. While they were drinking alone, they were also silently looking at the night sky and sea of clouds outside the window. Ji Tianqing took a closer look and realized that the two princes were not humans. The prince on the left was from the demon clan. She was a princess with a slim figure and a seductive temperament. The prince on the right was from the water clan. He was a young man who wore a purple robe and was as tall and sturdy as an iron tower. This person's face was resolute and powerful, and he had a valiant temperament. A golden dragon horn protruded from his forehead, and his exposed skin was also covered in fine scales. Ji Tianqing was not unfamiliar with the two princes. He still had some impressions of them. He knew that the seductive princess of the demon clan was called Fox Princess. She was the third princess of the monarch residence. The burly water prince with a horn on his forehead was the first prince of the monarch residence, Tai Yi. When Ji Tianqing took the risk to sneak into the monarch residence, he happened to see Divine Master Black Feather and many other princes having a meeting. During the meeting, both Fox Princess and Tai Yi spoke up. They had different opinions and argued for a while. At this moment, Ling Yichong saw that he was secretly sizing up Fox Princess and Tai Yi. He used his spiritual sense to explain, Junior Martial Brother Ji, these two princes are Fox Princess of the Demon Clan and Tai Yi of the Water Clan. The Emperor's concubine selection has attracted the attention of all races in the world. Not only have the princes of the human clan been invited, but the demon clan and the water clan will also send a prince as a representative to attend the ceremony. Chapter 548. Ji Tianqing had just entered the imperial residence not long ago, so there were very few princes he knew. Of course, Ling Yichen knew this, so he took the opportunity to quietly introduce him to the princes in the living room. The two of them did not show it on the surface as they held their wine cups and tasted the fine wine in silence. However, In reality, Ling Yichen was using his spiritual sense to continuously introduce them to Ji Tianqing. The prince in the white robe with the golden jade belt is called Lu Ziyuan. He's ranked 42nd in the residence. Junior apprentice brother Ji, the muscular young man in the black robe with silver stripes, is called Lu Zikang. He's ranked 37th in the imperial residence. And the one in the green robe who's surrounded by the princes is called Duanmu Yulong. He's the legitimate son of the Duanmu family and ranked 9th in the imperial residence. As for the one with the folding fan, Murong Lingfeng, who's so beautiful that he doesn't look like a man, I don't think I need to introduce him, right? After a short few minutes, Ling Yichen introduced the princes in the living room to Ji Tianqing one by one. Ji Tianqing listened quietly and silently memorized the names. When he heard the name Duanmu Yulong, he frowned and took a deep look at Duanmu Yulong. However, Duanmu Yulong was surrounded by the princes. He was chatting and laughing with the princes as if he was passing judgment on the world. He ignored Ji Tianqing as if he was not interested in even looking at him. Murong Lingfeng was also surrounded by the princes of the human race. He was like the moon surrounded by the stars and was clearly the leader of the princes. However, while he was talking and laughing with extraordinary confidence, he would always inadvertently glance at Ji Tianqing with a playful smile at the corner of his mouth. Soon, it was late at night. Most of the princes in the living room had stopped chatting and laughing. They were either drinking silently or finding a place to sit down and rest. Ling Yichen used the excuse that he was a little sleepy as an excuse to bid farewell to Ji Tianqing and left the living room. Ji Tianqing stood alone by the window and calmly looked at the night sky outside the window, admiring the changing of the stars and the churning of the sea of clouds. At this moment, a clear voice came from behind him. "Junior brother Ji, how have you been?" Ji Tianqing turned his head to look and saw Murong Lingfeng holding a white jade wine cup, walking over with a smile on his face. Today, Murong Lingfeng was wearing a white robe embroidered with dragons and phoenixes, as well as clouds. His hair was tied up in a high bun, and he wore a jade crown. His left hand held a green jade folding fan. She was even more beautiful than before, and there was a charming smile on her face that made people not dare to look at her directly. Ji Tianqing calmly nodded and said with an indifferent expression, "Everything is fine, brother Murong need not worry." Although his attitude was cold, Murong Lingfeng didn't mind at all. He smiled and walked to his side, chatting with him in a concerned tone. Ji Tianqing smiled coldly in his heart. He knew that this Murong Lingfeng had not given up and still wanted to strike up a conversation. However, he remained calm and collected on the surface as he tasted the spirit wine with an indifferent attitude, occasionally replying with a few words. In the corner of the living room not far away, the three princes clustered around Duanmu Yulong and were discussing something in low voices. Duanmu Yulong had a thoughtful expression, shaking his head or nodding from time to time, as if he was thinking about something. However, in reality, he was secretly paying attention to Ji Tianqing and Murong Lingfeng who were by the window. Seeing Murong Lingfeng take the initiative to express goodwill to Ji Tianqing, looking like they were chatting happily, Duanmu Yulong's eyes flashed with a mocking sneer as he thought to himself. "Humph, Murong Lingfeng, this coquettish thing, actually still hasn't given up and still wants to rope in Ji Tianqing. He doesn't know that the Lord has already given me a secret order to get rid of Ji Tianqing as soon as possible. Humph, it seems that the Lord still thinks highly of me." Thinking of this, Duanmu Yulong was somewhat pleased with himself. When he looked at Ji Tianqing again, his eyes became somewhat cold. "Damn Ji Tianqing, you actually came to the imperial court alive. Yesterday, you brat, you were lucky enough to escape a calamity, but you also caused me to lose a capable subordinate. However, after you leave the imperial court, I won't let you return to the imperial court alive." By the window, Murong Lingfeng and Ji Tianqing chatted for a long time. He found a few excuses to rope in Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing was not moved at all. His attitude toward Murong Lingfeng was very cold and indifferent. Murong Lingfeng cursed in his heart, but he could only give up for now. He smiled and said goodbye before leaving with his wine cup. After that, no one disturbed Ji Tianqing anymore. He had been standing by the window, staring at the night sky outside, thinking about something in silence. Before he knew it, a night had passed. The sky outside the window was bright, and a red glow appeared in the depths of the sea of clouds. A new day had arrived. Today was the day that the emperor would choose his heavenly consort. At this moment, many thearchs left the living room one after another. They walked in groups of 2 or 3 as they rushed to the Apocalypse Tower. Ling Yi, who had disappeared for half the night, appeared next to Ji Tianqing again. The two of them left the living room together and followed the crowd to the Apocalypse Tower. The Apocalypse Tower was located in the depths of the Imperial Court, behind the Palace of Heaven and Earth and the Palace of Heaven and Earth. It was a majestic golden pagoda that was 1,000 meters tall. It stood on the empty ground near the cliff. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yi left the side hall. They followed the main road and passed through 2 courtyards and palaces before finally arriving at the Apocalypse Tower. Under the sacred and majestic Apocalypse Tower, there were more than 100 imperial court guards guarding the empty ground. The doors of the Apocalypse Tower were already open. Many guests entered the pagoda excitedly and expectantly. Ji Tianqing followed the guests and the thearchs into the Apocalypse Tower. They followed the spiral staircase and climbed to the top of the pagoda. While climbing the pagoda, Ling Yi didn't forget to introduce the pagoda to Ji Tianqing. This Apocalypse Tower has 9 floors and is 999 meters tall. It's one of the most important buildings in the Imperial Court. Whenever the Imperial Court wants to hold a grand ceremony, it will be held at the Apocalypse Tower. It will be reported to the heavens and announced to the world. Only then will it appear sacred and solemn. 15 minutes later, the two of them reached the top of the Apocalypse Tower and arrived at the vast altar at the top. This flat, circular altar had a radius of 500 meters and could accommodate thousands of people to observe or hold ceremonies on the platform. There was a 2-meter-tall fence around the altar. It was made of heavenly star white jade and had lifelike patterns carved on it. It also contained a majestic array formation energy. In the center of the altar was a 100-meter-tall trapezoidal altar. It was made of thousands of pieces of stellar true gold and hundreds of gems. This extraordinary altar that contained a powerful and mysterious power was the Apocalypse Sacred Altar. Legend had it that the human Thearch who controlled the 9 cauldrons could use the power of the Apocalypse Sacred Altar to reach the will of the heavens and win the hearts of the people. It could receive the will of the heavens and bring blessings to billions of people. Ji Tianqing stood on the vast altar like the other guests. He looked at the Apocalypse Sacred Altar with a solemn expression. He couldn't help but feel respect for it. Chapter 549. Not long after, the sun rose. Below the Apocalypse Tower was a sea of white clouds. Half of the bright red sun was peeking out. The morning sun shone a red light that spread for billions of miles, spreading across the boundless sea of clouds. The boundless sea of clouds was suddenly filled with multicolored light. It was as mesmerizing as a fairyland. Many of the guests exclaimed in admiration at this beautiful scenery, revealing excited expressions. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was touched. He felt that the world was vast and boundless, but humans were tiny and weak. There are billions of mountains and rivers in the world. There are countless beautiful sights, but humans are limited. It is lucky to be able to appreciate them. I wonder when I can reach the legendary realm where I can see the rising sun of the East Sea in the morning and the setting sun of the West Wilderness in the evening. I can travel between the north and south in the morning and travel between the heavens and the earth. Very quickly, 2 hours passed. The beautiful scenery of the rising sun was over. Many guests finally regained their senses. At this moment, a few imperial court officials led groups of imperial court guards and maidservants up the Apocalypse Tower. Hundreds of guards and maidservants stood around the Apocalypse altar. They looked sincere and solemn. Everyone knew that the auspicious time was approaching. The emperor's concubine selection ceremony was about to begin. At this moment, a white-haired elder in a white robe and holding a golden horsetail whisk flew over from the sea of clouds. The elder's robe fluttered in the wind. He stepped on the clouds as if he was walking on flat ground. Everyone on the altar looked at him one after another. When they saw his sage-like and otherworldly appearance and temperament, they were all stunned. Many people looked at him with respect. They only thought that he was an old immortal who had descended from the heavens. Swoosh! The white-robed elder held the horsetail whisk and landed on the Apocalypse altar. He was spotlessly clean, and his aura was deep and vast. It was as if he was connected to the heavens and the earth. No one could see through him. Everyone's eyes were focused on him. The ceremonial officials, guards, and maids around the altar all bowed and paid their respects. They shouted, "Greetings, Your Majesty Imperial Preceptor." More than 100 guests and thearchs finally realized that the white-robed elder was the imperial tutor of the human imperial court. Immediately, the guests and the emperor's sons bowed respectfully. The imperial tutor looked at the crowd indifferently and gestured for them to rise. Then, he waved the golden horsetail whisk in his hand and used a secret technique to shoot out rays of five-colored spiritual light into the open heaven sacred altar. After the opening heaven altar lit up with a hazy brilliance and released a mysterious and vast invisible power, Yi Qingyu's eyes lit up. The imperial tutor solemnly bowed to the sky and said in a booming voice, "Today is the golden hour. In accordance with the will of the heavens, the Son of Heaven is choosing his heavenly concubine. This is a blessing for the imperial court, a grand ceremony for our race, and a sacred ceremony for billions of human beings. Therefore, I opened the holy altar and reported it to the heavens, to the people." The imperial tutor gave a solemn speech, reporting to the heavens the significance of today's grand ceremony, praying for the heavens to bear witness and bless. The ceremonial officials below the altar, as well as the hundreds of guards and maids, all knelt down on one knee and bowed to the heavens in a pious posture. The guests and the princes all felt a formless energy and connection descending from the sky onto the opening heaven sacred altar. This caused Ji Tianqing to be secretly shocked and somewhat puzzled. He had always thought that the heavens were just a title that didn't exist and could only be used to entrust the people's beautiful wishes. However, at this moment, he could deeply feel that the legendary heavens really did exist. There seemed to be a pair of invisible eyes in the sky staring at the open heaven tower and silently injecting an invisible and mysterious power. 15 minutes later, the imperial tutor finally finished the open heaven ceremony and opened the holy altar. Then, the imperial tutor loudly announced that the 3 heavenly concubine candidates were invited to come on stage and be judged by the heavens and the people. Ji Tianqing, like the other guests, turned to look at the exit at the edge of the open heaven altar. As a melodious string and woodwind music sounded, a group of maids escorted a beautiful woman to the open heaven altar and walked lightly toward it. That beautiful and elegant woman was wearing a gorgeous long dress that reached the ground and a jade phoenix crown that was inlaid with gold and embedded with jade and gems. She was dressed very elegantly. She lowered her head slightly, and a layer of golden beads dangled from the jade phoenix crown, faintly hiding her beautiful face. However, the more people couldn't see her face, the more they felt that she was beautiful and alluring. After this beautiful woman stepped onto the open heaven altar, the imperial tutor loudly announced, "The first heavenly concubine candidate is Lan Huixin. She is a beauty from the long heaven region." The guests in the hall whispered to each other. Then, another group of maids escorted the second beautiful woman to the open heaven altar. This beautiful woman was different from Lan Huixin. She didn't wear a graceful and luxurious dress, nor did she wear exquisite makeup. She was wearing a simple green robe and long skirt. She did not wear any makeup, nor did she wear any jewelry. However, she had an innate demure temperament, like an orchid in an empty valley, noble and elegant. She calmly stepped onto the open heaven altar and stood in the middle of the hall. She didn't look around, and only looked at the sea of clouds indifferently, quietly waiting. The imperial tutor loudly announced, "The second heavenly concubine candidate is Ansoan. She is a beauty from the Yong'an region." The guests in the surroundings once again burst into discussion. Some curiously looked at Ansoan, while others were amazed and praised. Murong Lingfeng, who was surrounded by several princes, stared at Ansoan's beautiful figure the moment she appeared. He couldn't move his eyes away. His eyes were filled with tenderness as he gazed at Ansoan. His eyes were filled with longing and yearning. He silently called out in his heart, hoping that Ansoan would turn her head and look at him. Even if it was just a look, it would make him feel at ease. However, Ansoan stood quietly and stared at the sea of clouds. She didn't look at anyone at all. Then, the third beautiful woman appeared on the open heaven altar. This beautiful woman wore a white long dress. Her figure was tall and perfect, and her face was beautiful. She was like the most perfect masterpiece of the Creator. However, her eyes were as indifferent as autumn water, and her temperament was as cold as frost. She was like a fairy from the 9 heavens, otherworldly. She just stood on the open heaven altar and didn't do anything. She didn't even need to show any expression, but her invisible aura suppressed Ansoan and Lan Huixin beside her. Without a doubt, this person was Yunyao. Many of the guests present had heard of Yunyao's name. They knew that she was the first daughter of the Cloud Spirit Palace, and now the princess of the imperial residence. After the imperial tutor introduced her, many of the guests and princes on the open heaven altar revealed looks of amazement and admiration. They all began to discuss. The 3 heavenly consort candidates were all present. Thus, the imperial tutor announced that the emperor would step onto the open heaven altar and choose his heavenly consort in front of everyone. Everyone turned their heads to look at the exit. They saw Long Yunxiao, who wore a golden robe and a square golden crown of dragons and phoenixes on his head, walk up the open heaven altar with majestic steps. At that moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Long Yunxiao. They looked at him with complicated expressions. Ever since Long Yunxiao's battle with Ji Tianqing, he hadn't appeared in public for a long time. There hadn't been any news about him either. It was rumored that his injuries were too severe and that he had been in seclusion to heal. However, at this moment, everyone saw that he was in high spirits. His aura was strong, and he didn't look like he was injured. Of course, the guests and princes were more concerned about who Long Yunxiao would choose as his heavenly consort. Chapter 550. The 3 heavenly consort candidates stood quietly on the holy altar and waited. When Long Yunxiao stepped onto the holy altar, Lan Huixin and Ansoan both looked up at him. Lan Huixin pretended to be dignified, but her eyes were filled with expectation and adoration as she looked around. Ansoan's gaze towards Long Yunxiao contained a trace of sincere concern, as well as her usual adoration. Only Yunyao did not look up at Long Yunxiao. It was as if she did not care about everything around her. With such a cold and aloof demeanor, she was truly like an otherworldly fairy. Long Yunxiao stood on the holy altar and bowed to the heavens. Then, he bowed to the imperial tutor. Finally, he looked at the 3 heavenly consort candidates. His expression was as cold as ice. He did not look happy about choosing a heavenly consort at all. Instead, he exuded a cold aura. Most of the guests were not familiar with him, so they could not see anything unusual about him. They only felt that this was the majestic aura that the emperor should have. However, the 3 heavenly consort candidates, Ji Tianqing, and the other princes could feel that something was wrong with Long Yunxiao. After a moment of silence, Long Yunxiao looked at the first beauty, Lan Huixin, under everyone's gaze. Lan Huixin lowered her head shyly when he looked at her. She did not dare to look him in the eye. However, her heart was filled with joy and excitement. Her heartbeat also sped up. The emperor looked at me first. It seems like he wants to talk to me. Could it be that the emperor wants to choose me as the heavenly consort? Thinking of this, Lan Huixin was overjoyed, and her body trembled with excitement. However, after waiting for a while, she did not hear the emperor announce his decision. She looked up in confusion. Long Yunxiao looked at her expressionlessly and said indifferently, "Miss Lan, you're a pure and kind girl." Long Yunxiao's voice was not loud, but it spread throughout the apocalyptic pagoda. Everyone heard it clearly. Many guests and princes looked at Long Yunxiao with bated breaths. They wondered if Long Yunxiao was going to choose Lan Huixin as his heavenly consort. Just as this thought appeared in everyone's mind, Long Yunxiao continued, "However, I'm not fated to be with you. I hope you can find the right person soon." After saying that, Long Yunxiao retracted his gaze and no longer looked at Lan Huixin. From beginning to end, his eyes were calm and indifferent, without the slightest fluctuation of emotion. Lan Huixin was immediately dumbfounded. She stood stiffly on the stage, not knowing what to do for a moment. Just a moment ago, she was filled with joy and excitement. She thought that she was going to be favored by the emperor and become a heavenly concubine. But at this moment, the Son of Heaven announced the result in a cold tone, causing her to fall from the clouds to hell. Lan Huixin was filled with grievances and heartbreak. She almost couldn't hold back her tears. However, this was the Apocalypse Pagoda. In front of so many powerful cultivators, how could she not care about her reputation? She could only suppress her grief and press her lips together, allowing the tears in her eyes to fall silently. At this moment, Long Yunxiao walked in front of Yunyao and looked at Yunyao with a complicated expression. He didn't open his mouth to speak, but his eyes, which were as deep as the starry sky and as complex as ripples on the surface of water, had already revealed everything. There was longing, gentleness, and reluctance. Yunyao also looked at him calmly. She did not speak, and her expression did not change. The two of them looked at each other but remained silent. Many guests and thearchs on the stage started whispering to each other. "I've heard that the Son of Heaven is infatuated with Yunyao and is determined to marry Yunyao as his heavenly concubine. I've heard about it too. This news is not a secret. All the major forces in Middle Ground know about it. Look at how affectionate they are looking at each other. It looks like there won't be any suspense today. The Son of Heaven is definitely going to choose Yunyao as his heavenly concubine." That's right. Among the three beauties, Yunyao is the most outstanding one. She is not only the Yun family's daughter but also the Thearcha's daughter. Only she is worthy of the Son of Heaven. This is a bit strange. If the Son of Heaven is going to choose Yunyao as his heavenly concubine, shouldn't he be filled with tenderness and happiness? Why does he look so disheartened? Everyone was secretly guessing, but they could not figure out Long Yunxiao's thoughts and decision. On the altar, Long Yunxiao did not speak. Instead, he secretly said to Yunyao with his spiritual sense, "Yao Yao. Although I was destined to withdraw and give up from the moment I was defeated by Ji Tianqing's sword, after so many days, when I face you and want to tell you the result personally, I still feel like my heart is being twisted by a knife. It's hard for me to give up." Yunyao looked at him calmly and asked with her spiritual sense, "So, you're going to go back on your word?" Long Yunxiao shook his head slightly and said solemnly, "No, as the Son of Heaven and the future Thearch, how can I go back on my word? Although only the three of us know about the agreement between Ji Tianqing and me. With my identity and the power of the imperial court, I can get rid of Ji Tianqing and force you to be my heavenly concubine. The world will not know about the twists and turns. But I can't do such a despicable thing. I can't face my conscience, and I can't face you." Hearing this, Yunyao already knew his choice. She said sincerely, "Long Yunxiao, thank you. Letting go of the obsession in your heart is not only letting go of Tianqing and me, but also redeeming yourself." Long Yunxiao was silent for a moment. Then, he continued, "That's right. Only by letting go of the obsession can you let go of yourself. Love is not selfish possession, but sincere dedication. Maybe he loves you more than I do, or maybe he's the one arranged by the heavens for you. However, although I've withdrawn and given up, I still see you as my best friend. If that brat Ji Tianqing dares to wrong you, I won't be polite to him." After the sound transmission, Long Yunxiao expressionlessly announced in front of everyone, "Yunyao is not my choice." When the people on the altar heard this, they immediately went into an uproar. Many people were astonished, not daring to believe this was true. At this time, Long Yunxiao had already walked in front of Ansoan. Lan Huixin and Yunyao had both been eliminated. The result was obvious. Ansoan's heart was filled with joy and happiness. Tears welled up in her eyes. She never thought that she would receive such a huge surprise when she had already given up hope. Could it be that the emperor has finally seen my feelings and sincerity and has been moved by me? Ansoan looked up at Long Yunxiao and gazed deeply into his eyes. However, what she saw was a pair of cold and emotionless eyes. While she was still in a daze, she heard Long Yunxiao say indifferently, "Soan, thank you for staying by my side and taking care of my injuries. I know that you've always wanted to become a heavenly consort. Since that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish and choose you as my heavenly consort." After saying this, Long Yunxiao turned around and left expressionlessly. The result was decided. The guards of honor immediately played a celebratory song. Countless guests and princes also clapped and cheered. The Apocalypse Pagoda was filled with jubilation. Countless people smiled and discussed enthusiastically. Ansoan, who should have been the happiest and the most excited, could not bring herself to be happy at all. She stood stiffly on the spot, looking at Long Yunxiao's back with a complicated expression. Her heart was filled with sorrow, and her heart was throbbing with pain. She had finally become a heavenly consort. She had fulfilled her long-cherished wish and obtained the result she wanted. However, what she wanted was definitely not this process. Compared to the position of heavenly consort, what she wanted the most was the emperor's heart. However, the result was like this. She could not refuse. She could only accept it. However, it was like a thorn in her heart. Chapter 551. Long Yunxiao stood expressionlessly on the open heaven altar, waiting for the imperial tutor to finish the rest of the ceremony. Ansoan looked at him with a complicated expression. Her heart was filled with bitterness and hesitation. Lan Huixin's eyes were filled with tears. She was sad that she had failed, but she was also very envious and jealous of Ansoan. Only Yunyao was calm. She was neither sad nor happy. In the crowd below the holy altar, Murong Lingfeng, who had been anxiously waiting, was now completely dumbfounded. He thought that the emperor would choose Yunyao as his heavenly consort. After all, the emperor had pursued Yunyao for many years. He was infatuated with Yunyao and had been secretly supporting the Yun family. No matter what, the emperor would choose Yunyao as his heavenly consort. This was a matter of course. Murong Lingfeng was still planning in his heart. Once the emperor's consort selection was over, he could openly pursue Ansoan. At that time, he would definitely use all of his abilities and all kinds of methods to make Ansoan stay in the central state, and then gradually capture her heart. However, the emperor chose Ansoan as his heavenly consort. To Murong Lingfeng, this was simply a bolt out of the blue, an enormous blow. After he regained his senses, his face twisted in anger. His eyes were filled with hatred and killing intent. Long Yun Xiao. You damn bastard! How dare you steal my Sowen in front of everyone? So what if you're the emperor? One day, I will make you lose all standing and reputation and die without a burial ground to avenge today's grudge. Murong Lingfeng clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. He roared in his heart. The pain of having his beloved taken away was like a sharp knife stabbing into his heart. It was unforgettable. The seed of hatred was buried deep in his heart. It was growing rapidly. However, this was the open heaven pagoda. The imperial tutor and many powerful cultivators were present. Murong Lingfeng did not dare to act up. He could only endure the humiliation and hide the hatred in his heart. Even if his teeth were broken, he had to swallow it down. A moment later, the hatred and murderous intent in his eyes disappeared. His eyes became cold and indifferent, and even a little empty and lifeless. After an unknown period of time, the concubine selection ceremony was finally completed. The emperor left the Apocalypse Pagoda with the new heavenly consort, Sowen, under everyone's gaze. Yun Yao and Lan Huixin also walked down the open heaven altar and left the top of the tower. The imperial tutor announced the end of the imperial concubine selection ceremony and told everyone that the imperial concubine and the imperial concubine would be officially married in 3 months. At that time, the imperial court would hold the conferring ceremony of the heavenly concubine and would invite all the guests to attend the ceremony again. Many guests silently noted down the time, thinking that the ceremony was over, and were about to leave. But at this moment, the imperial tutor announced another piece of news. Today, all the powerful beings of my race have gathered at the Apocalypse Pagoda. I have a second announcement to make. And this solemn and sacred matter concerns the safety and future of billions of people in the heavenly stellar region. More than 100 guests on the altar immediately stopped in their tracks. They looked at the imperial preceptor with sparkling eyes, their faces full of anticipation. Most of these guests were powerful beings and rulers of the human race. Among them were the overlords of the 8 southern regions, the heads of the ancient families, the city lords of the various cities in Middle Ground, and the leaders of many first-rate forces. Everyone could feel that the imperial tutor's attitude was solemn and serious. The news that he was about to announce would definitely be shocking. Indeed, the imperial tutor said solemnly, as everyone knows, the 8 regions of my race have the position of territorial lord. The 8 territorial lords manors respectively rule the 8 southern regions. They lead the various martial Dao sects and protect billions of people in hundreds of kingdoms. For the past 1,000 years, the southern regions have been peaceful and stable. The people have been living in peace and contentment, only the heavenly stellar region has never had a territorial lord. It is ruled and protected by the ancient realm of the stellar region. However, the heavenly stellar region is located in the south and is too far away from the imperial court. Even if the imperial court wants to protect it, it is too far away. Recently, there have been drastic changes in the ancient realm of the stellar region. We are unable to rule the heavenly stellar region and protect the people of the 10 nations. Many of the guests were powerhouses and superiors of the human race. Which one of them was not quick-witted and intelligent? Hearing the imperial tutor's words, everyone understood what he meant and guessed what he was about to announce. Suddenly, everyone was shocked and stared at him with their eyes wide open. The imperial tutor paused for a moment and looked around the room with a dignified gaze. He said slowly in a solemn tone, "In order to protect the peace of the heavenly stellar region and protect billions of people, the imperial court has decided to select a young powerhouse with both integrity and talent to be the territorial lord of the heavenly stellar region. In the next month, all the princes of my race who have reached the heavenly origin realm can register with the imperial court. In a month, the imperial court will select the candidates. The princes and the young powerhouses will compete for the position of the territorial lord of the heavenly stellar region." When the imperial tutor's voice spread throughout the room, many of the guests were full of anticipation. The eyes of the princes were shining brightly. Their blood was boiling and their hearts were beating faster. Everyone secretly made up their minds to participate in this competition and work hard to become the territorial lord of the heavenly stellar region. If they could control the heavenly stellar region, they could control hundreds of thousands of miles of mountains and rivers and lead the people of the 10 nations. One of the 9 territorial lords of the human race. How noble and honorable was that? Thinking of this, many of the princes secretly clenched their fists and were eager to try. In particular, Duanmu Yulong and Murong Lingfeng were filled with excitement and impatience. Both of them knew very well that if they could become the territorial lord of the heavenly stellar region, they would have more power and influence. They would strengthen their own families and completely suppress the other 2 families. Even Ji Tianqing's heart was full of desire and anticipation. Although he was not greedy for power, he came from the heavenly stellar region. His family, homeland, and sect were there. He also wanted to compete for the position of the territorial lord and control the heavenly stellar region in his own hands. Only then could he better protect his family, friends, and sect. If someone else became the territorial lord of the heavenly stellar region and led the various sects and the 10 nations, who knew what the situation would be like? When the imperial tutor saw everyone's anticipation and enthusiasm, he could not help but reveal a look of satisfaction. He gave a few more speeches to end the ceremony. Then, he announced the end of the ceremony. After saying that, he flew into the sea of clouds in a flash and left with the wind. The ceremonial officer, hundreds of guards, and maids on the altar hurriedly bowed and saluted. Many guests also bowed and saluted, shouting, "Respectfully send off Your Highness Imperial Preceptor." After the imperial tutor left, the guests and princes on the altar left the top of the pagoda one after another. After they walked down the Apocalypse Pagoda, they were still discussing enthusiastically in groups. Some were discussing Ansuan becoming the heavenly consort, while others were discussing the selection of the territorial lord of the heavenly stellar region. In short, the 2 things that happened today shocked the 9 regions of the south and affected the entire human race. Please recommend me. Chapter 552. After a while, all the guests and princes left the Apocalypse Pagoda. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yiju followed the crowd down the Apocalypse Pagoda and walked out of the Palace of Heaven and Earth. In the square outside the Palace of Heaven and Earth, many guests were saying their goodbyes to each other. After the ceremony, the guests naturally had to leave the imperial court. Although they would come to the imperial court to attend the heavenly concubine's coronation ceremony, they had to wait for 3 months. However, they would have to wait for 3 months. They would only be able to come after receiving the imperial court's invitation. Not long after, the hundreds of guests said their goodbyes to each other and left the mountain peak one after another, walking down the mountain along the divine path. The princes from the imperial residence were not in a hurry to leave. Everyone was thinking about the competition for the Tianshan region lord, so they had to stay and watch. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yiju stood in the square and looked at the guests leaving. The princes around them started to talk softly. "Junior brother Ji, I heard that you're from the Tianshan region. You can't miss the selection for the Tianshan region lord," Ling Yiju said with a smile. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said calmly, "Of course, we have to compete. However, from the looks of it, those princes are all determined to obtain it. When the time comes, there will inevitably be a fierce battle." Ling Yiju smiled and nodded. "That's right. After all, it's the competition for the region lord's position. Who doesn't want to fight for it? If they can become the region lord, they will be one of the most respected figures in our clan. They will have great power. Not to mention these princes, once the news spread out, who knew how many young experts would participate in the competition? Therefore, I won't join in the fun." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and was slightly surprised. He asked, "Senior brother Ling, you won't join in the competition? Are you going to leave the imperial court and return to the imperial residence?" No, no, no. Ling Yiju waved his hand and said with a playful smile, of course I'll stay. I'll wait to watch junior brother Ji fight for the region lord's position. Senior brother Ling, you must be joking. Ji Tianqing smiled and did not take Ling Yiju's words to heart. Ling Yichen was only joking and did not continue the topic. Junior brother Ji, since you've decided to participate in the competition, there's no need for you to return to the monarch estate. Let's go to the nearby Liantian city. That's the closest main city to the imperial court. Moreover, if you stay in Liantian city temporarily, you will be able to receive news from the imperial court faster, making it easier for you to act. Ji Tianqing hesitated for a moment and did not immediately agree. At this moment, a young woman in green who was dressed like a maid quickly walked up to him. The maid didn't say anything else. She just bowed to him and handed him an exquisite jade hairpin before turning around and leaving. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. He wanted to stop the maid and ask a few questions. But the maid left without looking back, apparently unwilling to divulge any information. Ji Tianqing withdrew his puzzled gaze and looked down at the jade hairpin in his hand. When he saw the appearance of the jade hairpin, he frowned. He immediately recognized the jade hairpin. It was the wind and fire wings that Yunyao always wore in her hair. He gently twisted the wind and fire wings and took out a small silver piece of paper from it. There was a line of beautiful and spirited words written on the paper. Tianqing, I'll be waiting for you at Yunlan's residence in Liantian city. There was no doubt that this was Yunyao's handwritten note. That graceful and light handwriting was definitely not something an ordinary woman could write. Ji Tianqing silently put away the note and the wind and fire wings. His eyes revealed a trace of a smile. I was just about to look for eldest senior sister when she sent someone to deliver a letter to me, he murmured in his heart and followed Ling Yichen out of the square in front of the hall and down the mountain. Ling Yichen glanced at him with a strange expression and joked, Junior brother Ji, a maid actually delivered a letter to you? Could it be that you have a date with a beautiful woman? TSK, I didn't know that junior brother Ji had such good luck with women. Ji Tianqing only raised his eyebrows and didn't explain anything. He calmly said, let's go. We'll go to Liantian city. Then, the two of them walked down Liantian Peak together. After leaving the imperial court, the two of them flew into the sky and rushed towards the northwest as fast as lightning. 500 miles northwest, at the edge of the Liantian mountain range, there was a bustling city with a radius of 100 miles. It was Liantian city. On the way, Ji Tianqing noticed that many guests and princes who had just left the imperial court were also rushing towards Liantian city like the two of them. Obviously, those guests and princes weren't willing to leave and wanted to stay in Liantian city temporarily to observe the situation. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing and Ling Yichen entered Liantian city. After entering the city, the two of them parted ways. At a crossroad in the city, Ji Tianqing said to Ling Yichen, Senior brother Ling, I'm going to meet a friend. Goodbye. Ling Yichen nodded and said with a smile, all right. If you need anything, come to the Great Fortune Inn in the city to find me. After saying that, the two of them cupped their fists and bade farewell. They turned around and flew away. Ji Tianqing asked around in the city and quickly found the cloud mist courtyard. This courtyard that was 1,000 square meters in radius was built with a grand aura. It was luxurious and magnificent. There were a few magnificent palaces and a few quiet courtyards. There were also hundreds of guards and maids. The entire courtyard was protected by a defensive formation. There were many experts hidden in the courtyard. The security was very tight. Ji Tianqing sized up the cloud mist courtyard and guessed that this courtyard was most likely the property of the Cloud Spirit Palace. He walked towards the entrance and was immediately stopped by a few guards. After he revealed his identity, the guards immediately let him in. Young Prince Tianqing, our young miss is waiting for you. Please follow me. One of the guards led the way and led him into the depths of the courtyard. Ji Tianqing followed the guard through a palace and 2 courtyards. He entered a palace called the Water Cloud Palace. The guard led him to the door of a secret room. After saying goodbye, he turned around and left. At the door of the secret room, there was a tall and thin woman in a black dress guarding it. She stared at Ji Tianqing. There was a hint of scrutiny in her eyes. Ji Tianqing stared at her and could not help but frown. He could naturally see that this ordinary-looking woman in black in her 30s was a powerhouse at the divine origin stage. Moreover, this woman had always been protecting Yunyao. She must be a trusted guard arranged by the Cloud Spirit Palace. The woman in black sized up Ji Tianqing before activating the formation on the door of the secret room. She cupped her hands and reported into the secret room, "Young miss, Ji Tianqing is here." Yun Yao's voice immediately came from the secret room. "Yun Luo, let him in." Yun Luo pushed open the stone door of the secret room and gestured for Ji Tianqing to enter. "Ji Tianqing, please come in." Chapter 553. Inside the dimly lit secret chamber, there were many gemstone lamps embedded in the walls, exuding a colorful glow. There was a spell formation in the middle of the secret chamber, and Yunyao was sitting in the middle of the spell formation in a long white dress. Her long hair draped over her shoulders, and she sat with a calm expression. Her entire body was enveloped in a faint layer of colorful light, making her appear even more beautiful and otherworldly. When she saw Ji Tianqing enter the secret chamber, her calm and indifferent expression became much gentler. "Tianqing, you're here." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He walked in front of her and sat down across from her. "Yao Yao, I was just about to go find you after the ceremony ended, but I didn't expect you to have already made arrangements." As he spoke, he took out the wings of wind and fire from his spatial ring and handed them back to Yunyao. Yunyao accepted the jade hairpin and gathered her long hair into a bun before inserting the jade hairpin into her hair. "Before the heavenly prince chose his consort, it was inconvenient for us to meet in order to avoid criticism and unnecessary trouble for you. Now that the heavenly prince has chosen his heavenly consort, you and I are no longer restricted by this." Yunyao stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a calm tone. The corner of her mouth curled up into a faint smile. Ji Tianqing had the same thoughts as her and nodded in agreement. Now that the heavenly prince had chosen his heavenly consort, there were no longer any obstacles between him and Yunyao. The last trace of worry in his heart also disappeared. After a moment of silence, he sighed with emotion. Long Yunshao is indeed a gentleman. His words are law. I just didn't expect that he would be able to suppress his grief and choose Ensuan as his heavenly consort. I'm afraid no one expected this result. Yunyao nodded and said calmly, Ensuan was born in a family of demon refiners. Although the Yin family is located in the south, it is also a prestigious family with a heritage of several hundred years. With Ensuan's background and talent, she is indeed a good match for Long Yunshao. The two of them are a perfect match. I only hope that Long Yunshao can let go of the past soon and accept Ensuan. Only then will he not be depressed and affect the situation in the imperial court. Yes. Ji Tianqing nodded and said solemnly, all right, let's not talk about this anymore. Let bygones be bygones. Yao Yao, after you left, the imperial tutor announced another piece of news. The imperial court wants to select a new leader for the Tianshan region. He told Yunyao everything about the territorial lord selection. Yunyao frowned and said seriously, this is very important. No matter who becomes the Tianshan region lord, it will affect the power structure of our clan. In my race, the imperial court is the leader and has the highest status. In terms of power and status, below the imperial court were the three ancient clans, followed by the 4 directions divine generals and the 8 region lords. Then there are the city lords of the various cities in Central State, as well as the leaders of the first-rate forces. Ji Tianqing listened in silence, and had a clearer understanding of the power structure of the human race. Yunyao continued, the position of the Tianshan region lord is very honorable and important. Not only will the princes fight for it, but the princes of the imperial court and the young experts of the various clans and forces will also participate. The princes of the Murong and Duanmu clans will also not let go of this opportunity. Once they obtain the position of the Tianshan region lord, their power will increase exponentially. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, that's right. Many princes are determined to obtain the position of the Tianshan region lord. However, the imperial court will screen the people who sign up for the competition and will only announce the name list after a month. I come from the Tianshan region. My family and hometown are there, as well as our sect. Even if the chances are slim, I will try my best. Yunyao frowned and thought for a moment before nodding in agreement. Tianqing, I support you in competing for the position of the territorial lord. If you can become the Tianshan region lord, not only will you be able to protect your family and hometown, but you will also be able to protect our sect. The Sky Pillar sect has many things to do now, and it will take many years for it to gradually recover. If someone else becomes the Tianshan region lord, our sect will definitely be suppressed and ostracized. It might be very difficult for us to recover. I understand. Ji Tianqing nodded again and said solemnly, so, I will do my best. After a pause, he continued, Yao Yao, if it's possible, I would like you to help me investigate Ling Exian's identity. No problem. I will instruct Yun Luo later. Yunyao agreed without hesitation, then asked, Tianqing, why do you suddenly want to investigate him? Ji Tianqing explained, when I came to the imperial court, Ling Exian took the initiative to travel with me. On the way, we were attacked by 2 mysterious assassins. Although I killed one of the assassins, Ling Exian defeated the other one. However, I still haven't figured out who sent the 2 assassins. Yunyao raised her eyebrows and asked solemnly, Tianqing, are you suspecting Ling Exian? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, I don't think he is someone who wants to deal with me, but he gives me a strange feeling. Now, we can only act cautiously and investigate all suspicious people. Yes, it should be so. Yunyao nodded slightly and agreed with his approach. She pondered for a moment, then said with a puzzled face, Tianqing, although you defeated Long Yunshao in public and entered the monarch residence, you have been in the limelight recently. However, the major forces will only pay attention to you and won't send assassins to assassinate you. Who is it that can't wait to take your life? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, I have also been puzzled and have no clue. Logically speaking, I made Long Yunshao lose face and damaged the dignity of the imperial court. The one with the most reason to get rid of me should be the imperial court. However, Long Yunshao and the imperial court won't do such a despicable thing. Besides, I have just arrived in the central state and have yet to become enemies with any forces. Who would want to kill me? Yunyao thought for a while in silence, then said in a deep voice, we are in the open while the enemy is in the dark. As the saying goes, there is only 1,000 days of being a thief, but not 1,000 days of guarding against thieves. We can't passively defend all the time. Tianqing, maybe we can take the initiative to attack and lure the enemy out, then capture them and interrogate them. Ji Tianqing quickly nodded and said with a smile, yes, I have the same idea. However, the enemy is very alert and won't be fooled easily. We have to think of a good countermeasure. Yunyao thought for a moment and said, the enemy has lost a Sky Origin Realm assassin, so they might not take action in the next few days. Tianqing, you stay in Yunlan's courtyard and recuperate for a few days. After a few days, when the enemy relaxes their vigilance and can't hold back anymore, we will lure them out. Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile and said, all right, we will do as you say. After discussing the plan, the two talked about some other trivial matters. Chapter 554. In the next few days, the consecutive city became even more lively and noisy. Hundreds of thousands of people were discussing the imperial court's concubine selection and the imperial court selection of the heavenly stellar region lord. Many human powerhouses and more than 10 princes stayed in the consecutive city temporarily as they waited for the imperial court's news. Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in the secret chamber in the cloud mist courtyard. He had not shown himself at all. The noise and disturbance in the outside world had nothing to do with him. Ever since he had advanced to the heavenly origin stage, the speed of his improvement had slowed down a lot. Even with the help of the burial of heaven to transfer a vast amount of energy to him, it took him a total of 5 days to increase his strength by 40%. This morning, his strength finally had a breakthrough and naturally reached the second level of the heavenly origin stage. Although it seemed to others that he had only advanced to the heavenly origin stage for about a month, he had advanced another level. Only he knew how much effort he had put in to increase his strength. Early in the morning, he finished his cultivation and opened his eyes. The heavenly levitation orb that Master gave me back then contained 400 years of Master Qing Tian's energy. The vast amount of energy allowed me to advance from the 5th level of the origin core stage to the 2nd level of the heavenly origin stage within a few months. It also allowed the burial of heaven to recover 20% of his strength. After a few months of consumption, the 400 years of energy has been completely depleted. From now on, the speed of my improvement will be even slower and more difficult. Ji Tianqing thought to himself with a solemn expression on his face. After a while, he stood up and walked out of the secret chamber. He entered the Shui Yun Palace to look for Yunyao. Yunyao had also been cultivating in seclusion for 5 days. Her strength had improved by quite a bit. After the two of them met, they chatted for a while before they left the cloud mist courtyard together and walked out of the consecutive city. Tianqing, the cloud mist courtyard is guarded by powerhouses. There are also many guards and formations. The assassins hiding in the dark won't dare to act rashly. Since that's the case, we'll take the initiative to attack and lure them out of the city. I've already arranged for Yun Luo to follow us secretly and be ready to support us at any time. While rushing out of sky-piercing city, Yunyao didn't forget to use her spiritual sense to inform Ji Tianqing of the situation. Ji Tianqing listened quietly and walked side by side with her on the street. On the surface, they seemed to be strolling, but in fact, they were secretly paying attention to the situation around them. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed quickly. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao passed through the towering North City Gate and left Liantian City. Outside the city was a vast mountain range. Nearby, there was a green grassland. In the distance, there were dark green mountains. They were like huge dark brown dragons lying between heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao crossed a mountain peak and soon disappeared into the mountains. The two of them advanced in the mountains at a leisurely pace, as if they were on a scenic tour, appearing very leisurely and comfortable. However, an entire hour passed, and the mysterious assassin did not appear. On the top of a mountain in front of him, several figures entered Ji Tianqing's vision. Although they were separated by a few kilometers, he was still able to see the scene at the top of the mountain. He saw 5 men with ferocious auras surrounding 4 men and women, and they were shouting and cursing at something in an arrogant manner. "Let's go over and take a look." Ji Tianqing flapped his golden wings and pulled Yunyao to fly through the sky, and he flew swiftly like a flowing light towards the top of the mountain. When the two of them descended on the top of the mountain, they saw the appearance of the 2 groups of people clearly and heard their voices. Amongst the 5 men with ferocious auras, there were 4 middle-aged men, and they were all experts at the 7th or 8th level of the origin core stage. These 4 people were dressed like attendants and guards, and they clustered around a young man in luxurious clothes. The young man wore a long embroidered robe, had greasy hair and a powdered face, and his entire body emitted an arrogant aura that held his head high. He was obviously an ignorant and incompetent profligate disciple, yet he insisted on wearing a jade crown and holding a folding fan in his hand, and he made the appearance of an elegant young master. In the other group of people, there were 3 men and a woman. 3 of the middle-aged men wore black robes and held treasured swords that flickered with cold lights in their hands, and they joined forces to protect a pure and beautiful woman. These 4 people were all dignified, and they were obviously martial artists from reputable sects with a single glance. But unfortunately, the 3 black-robed men only had a strength at the 6th level of the origin core stage. Whereas the peerless beauty that was protected by them only had a strength at the 5th level of the origin core stage. Both sides were in a deadlock on the empty space at the top of the mountain, and the 3 black-robed martial artists wanted to protect the peerless beauty and leave, yet they were utterly unable to free themselves. The profligate young man fanned himself with a folding fan in his hand, and his eyes glowed as he stared at the peerless beauty with a covetous appearance. A malicious smile hung on his face, and he said with a frivolous tone, "Miss Lon, this young master has heard of your name since long ago, and I've always wanted to see your beautiful face. Today, I've finally accomplished my wish. Sky City is this young master's territory, and since Miss Lon has come here, how could you leave hastily? Miss Lon, please do me the honor and come to this young master's mansion as a guest, and this young master will definitely treat you well." Ha ha ha. Lan Huixin did not open her mouth to speak, but the 3 black-robed martial artists shouted angrily, "Fourth young master Qin, we have no enmity with you, so why are you so aggressive? We're temporarily staying in Sky City, but you're always pestering Miss Lon. Now that we've been forced to leave Sky City, you still chased us here. How can you be so shameless? Aren't you just coveting our sex Miss Lan's beauty? Miss Lon is a heavenly concubine candidate, so how can you pursue her?" The profligate young man who was called 4th young master Qin instantly grinned and sneered ferociously. "Huh, you 3 brainless geese. You're only the deacons of the vast Sky sect, and you're nothing in front of this young master. Previously in the city, this young master did not fuss with you because of my status and face. But now that we're out of Sky City, you still dare to talk to this young master like this? You really don't know what's good for you." After sneering, a murderous intent flashed in 4th young master Qin's eyes. He ordered the 4 guards behind him, "Go. Kill those 3 stupid donkeys." The 4 guards immediately sneered ferociously and emitted a chilling murderous intent. They waved their swords and pounced on the 3 black-robed deacons. Bam! 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 Dozens of dazzling sword radiances lit up and blew up a gust of wind on the mountain peak, causing a series of muffled sounds. After exchanging a few blows, the 3 black-robed deacons were sent flying and fell on the grass with blood all over their bodies. The 4 guards swarmed forward again and slashed out dozens of sword radiances with their sabers and swords, drowning the 3 black-robed deacons. Suddenly, blood splattered everywhere on the grass, and huge gullies were formed on the ground, causing sand and dust to splatter everywhere. The disparity in strength between the 2 sides was too great, and the 3 black-robed deacons could not stop the 4 guards at all. They were all killed in a moment. Lan Huixin, who was wearing a long brocade dress, was enraged when she saw the 3 deacons being killed on the spot. "4th young master Qin, you beast. I'll fight it out with you." Lan Huixin's heart was filled with tears as she cried out in despair. She waved her sword and charged toward 4th young master Qin. However, she had only taken a few steps when she was stopped by 2 guards. Swoosh! The sword in her hand was snatched away, and the acupuncture points on her neck and back were sealed. Suddenly, her body stiffened and she was rooted to the ground, unable to move. 4th young master Qin walked in front of her with a smile and caressed her delicate face. He said proudly, "Lan Huixin, the emperor doesn't want you, but I'm willing to marry you. For a lowly person from the southern land like you, it's your fortune that this young master has taken a liking to your beauty. If you know what's good for you, you'll obey me obediently, and I can even give you the status of a legal wife. If you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me for using force on you. Chapter 555. Lan Huixin stood stiffly on the grass as she looked at the fourth young master Qin in front of her. Her heart was filled with despair. After leaving the imperial court, she wanted to stay in Liantian city for a while to see if she could get close to the emperor. However, she didn't expect the fourth young master Qin to have his eyes on her. The fourth young master Qin was mesmerized by her beauty and harassed her every day and night, trying to get her. She couldn't stand the harassment and could only leave Liantian city quietly with the 3 attendants. However, the fourth young master Qin chased after her and wouldn't stop until he got her. Now that the 3 attendants were killed and she had fallen into the fourth young master Qin's hands, she couldn't resist at all. The Eternal Heaven sect was the #1 sect in the Eternal Heaven region. However, none of her elders could save her. Her identity as the top disciple of the Eternal Heaven sect couldn't intimidate the arrogant fourth young master Qin. Lan Huixin had always thought that with her beauty, she would definitely marry a noble genius like the Son of Heaven. However, she was now in the fourth young master Qin's hands and couldn't do anything. She was filled with grief and despair when she thought about how she would soon be taken by the fourth young master Qin and become his plaything. Unfortunately, at this moment, there was no response to her cries. She couldn't even commit suicide. Fourth young master Qin, you bastard. Even if I die, I won't let a bastard like you taint my innocence. Lan Huixin glared at the fourth young master Qin. Her eyes were filled with hatred and killing intent. However, the fourth young master Qin wasn't angry. He looked at her with a smile and praised, "Tisk tsk, you're indeed a peerless beauty. Even when you're angry, you're still so alluring." As he spoke, he quickly waved his hand and ordered the guards behind him. "Hurry up and bring this young master's little beauty back. This young master can't wait to enjoy her, he. However, just as he was laughing evilly, a bone-chilling shout came from behind him. "There's actually such a despicable bastard near the Holy Imperial Court in broad daylight and doing such a heinous deed." It was the cold voice of a woman. Her tone was filled with anger and killing intent. Fourth young master Qin quickly turned his head and looked behind him. With one look, his eyes immediately widened, and a strong sense of amazement surged in his eyes. In the forest at the edge of the open space, a pair of peerlessly beautiful young man and woman were walking out side by side. The woman who spoke was dressed in a long white dress. She was a beautiful woman with a cold and otherworldly temperament. If Lan Huixin was said to be a peerless beauty in the mortal world, then this white-clothed beauty was an immortal in the heavens, an otherworldly fairy. There's actually such a beautiful woman in this world. Fourth young master Qin was stunned. His eyes widened as he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Without a doubt, the young man and woman with noble bearings were Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. The two of them stepped across the grass and walked towards the center of the field with cold expressions. Ji Tianqing glanced coldly at fourth young master Qin, and it instantly scared fourth young master Qin to the point his body trembled, and a chill ran down his back. However, Ji Tianqing ignored him and turned to look at the 4 guards who were stunned on the spot and didn't know what to do. "Those who kill will be killed." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his left hand with an indifferent expression, and a golden spirit light gushed out from his palm. Swish! 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 He seemed to casually wave his hand, and 4 enormous golden sword lights shot towards the 4 guards with a bang. The auras of the 4 guards were locked onto by the 5-meter-long sword lights, and they instantly felt a chill run down their bodies as if they felt the arrival of death. Their faces were filled with fear as they subconsciously used their light body movement techniques to retreat as fast as lightning. However, the 4 golden sword lights were like flowing lights that instantly streaked across the sky and fiercely pierced them. Bang! 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 The 4 guards at the 7th and 8th level of the Origin Core stage didn't have the chance to dodge or block at all, and they were penetrated by the golden sword lights on the spot. Their bodies exploded with a bang, and blood splattered all over the sky and splattered onto the grass. In just a short span of a breath, the 4 ferocious guards were instantly killed just like that and turned into pieces that scattered all over the ground. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing didn't even blink. His expression was indifferent, and his movements were casual as if he was swatting a few mosquitoes to death. Seeing this scene, the 4th young Master Qin's eyes widened on the spot, and his face was filled with terror. His body stiffened on the spot, and his back quietly broke out in cold sweat. Although the 4th young Master Qin was despicable and foppish, he wasn't stupid. He immediately realized that the white-robed young man who was like a god of death must be a Sky Origin stage powerhouse. His 4 guards were instantly killed by the white-robed young man, and he absolutely wouldn't be able to block a single move from the white-robed young man, not even a single finger of the white-robed young man. When he thought of this, his heart clenched tightly, and he hurriedly racked his brains to think of a countermeasure. At this moment, Ji Tianqing looked at him with an indifferent gaze. The 4th young Master Qin was instantly frightened, and without waiting for him to speak, he shouted angrily, "Kid, do you know who I am? I'm the son of the Liantian city governor, the 4th young master of the Qin clan. If you dare to lay your hands on me, my father will not let you off." The 4th young Master Qin was smart because he had always been tyrannical and oppressive in Liantian city. He would never go to other places to stir up trouble. Every time he met a troublesome person, he would immediately announce his identity and use the name of his father, the Liantian city governor. In this way, most people were afraid of the Liantian city governor's identity, and wouldn't make things difficult for him. This was a tried and tested method, and the 4th young Master Qin had already developed the habit of relying on someone else's might. It was a pity that he met Ji Tianqing today, and he was destined to meet a tragic end. The son of the Liantian city governor? No wonder you're so tyrannical and ruthless. Ji Tianqing frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The 4th young Master Qin thought there was a chance for him to turn the situation around, and he said arrogantly, "Kid, no matter who you are, I won't pursue the matter of you killing my guards. If you know what's good for you, you'd better leave this place immediately, or else." Before he could finish his words, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out a ray of golden light. Smack! The golden light turned into a palm and slapped the 4th young Master Qin's face, sending him flying backward and spitting out blood as he fell on the grass. When he got up from the ground, half of his face was swollen like a pig's head, and half of his teeth were gone. "Kid! You've gone too far." The 4th young Master Qin covered his bleeding mouth and roared furiously, "How dare you not give face to the Liantian city governor? Do you dare to tell me your name? I'm Ji Tianqing from the imperial residence." Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and waved his hand again to shoot out a ray of golden light. Swoosh! The golden light turned into a sharp sword and pierced through the 4th young Master Qin's abdomen, crushing his filthy and evil root into pieces, causing a rain of blood to burst out. Chapter 556. Ah! You damn bastard! How dare you cut off my bloodline? The 4th young Master Qin was lying on the ground, rolling on the ground in pain as he let out a heart-wrenching scream. However, no matter how miserable he screamed, Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Lan Huixin wouldn't pity him at all. Ji Tianqing glanced at him indifferently and shouted coldly, "Get lost." The 4th young Master Qin didn't dare to stay any longer. He endured the pain and quickly got up from the ground, limping away. He held back his anger and killing intent as he ran 100 meters away in a panic. Then, he turned around and glared at Ji Tianqing with resentment. Ji. God. Fine. I'll remember you. How dare you cut off my family jewels? I'll make sure you die without a burial place. The fourth young master Qin knew very well that since the other party wasn't afraid of his father, the Liantian city governor, he had the right to look down on Liantian city. Moreover, the other party was a Sky Origin stage powerhouse who could kill him with a flip of his palm. Therefore, he temporarily suppressed his anger and didn't curse Ji Tianqing. He also didn't say any harsh words. He only roared twice in his heart and remembered today's grudge. Then, he quickly ran away from the mountain peak in the direction of Liantian city. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao ignored the fourth young master Qin and calmly walked toward Lan Huixin. Lan Huixin's acupuncture points were sealed, and her body was stiff as she stood there. When she saw Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao walking toward her, she was in disbelief. At the critical moment, someone actually saved her and saved her from the clutches of the devil. Naturally, she was pleasantly surprised and grateful. However, when she recognized Yun Yao, her mood became very complicated as countless thoughts flashed through her mind. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao arrived in front of her. Yun Yao stared at Lan Huixin and observed her for a while. Then, she stretched out her finger and poked a few times on her body to help her unseal her acupuncture points. Lan Huixin finally regained her freedom of movement. She immediately cried like a pear blossom in the rain and bowed to Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao to thank them. Thank you, young master and sister Yun Yao, for saving my life. If it weren't for the two of you, I really wouldn't have the face to live in this world anymore. Lan Huixin's Yun Yao's voice was soft and timid. She looked really pitiful and pitiful. Yun Yao reached out to support her arm and asked doubtfully, Miss Lan, it's nothing much. It's not worth mentioning. You, on the other hand, why are you being pestered by that hedonistic young master? And why did you have a conflict here? Lan Huixin took out a white handkerchief and wiped the tears from her pretty face and eyes. She explained with a choked voice, Sister Yun Yao, after the Great Hall ended that day, I left the imperial court and went to Liantian city to stay temporarily with the 3 deacons of my sect. Who would have thought that fourth young master Qin, that evil scoundrel, heard the news from somewhere and found the inn I was staying at and harassed me in every way possible. Lan Huixin explained the cause and process of the matter in full detail to him. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao finally understood the whole story. Yun Yao's pretty face was cold. She still cursed with anger, that evil scoundrel really deserves to die. He relied on his father's power and ran amok in the city. Miss Lan, you were once a heavenly consort candidate, but he still dared to treat you like this. You can imagine how arrogant and despotic that evil scoundrel usually is in Liantian city. The punishment that Tianqing gave him just now was also a taste of his own medicine. He deserved it. After saying that, Yun Yao opened her mouth to comfort Lan Huixin a few more words. Only then did her emotions calm down. Ji Tianqing stood at the side and waited silently. He didn't say anything. Lan Huixin was a beautiful woman and had been with Yun Yao for some time. The two of them could be considered acquaintances. Now that such a thing had happened, as a man, he couldn't say anything. Yun Yao was naturally the best choice to comfort Lan Huixin. After a while, when Lan Huixin's mood stabilized, Yun Yao said, Miss Lan, the Great Hall has already ended. Liantian city is a place of trouble. I'm afraid it's not suitable for you to stay here. Why don't you return to the Long Heaven region? That evil scoundrel only dares to run amok in Liantian city. He might not dare to go to the Long Heaven region. Hearing Yun Yao's persuasion, Lan Huixin shook her head and said with grievance and fear, Elder sister Yun Yao, I can't stay in the imperial court in Liantian city. But I don't dare to go back to the Long Heaven region. The 3 deacons who accompanied me were killed. I'm all alone and weak. If I want to go back to the Long Heaven region from the Central region, I'm afraid I'll enter the tiger's den after leaving the dragon's den. Yunyao was silent and couldn't continue to persuade her. Of course, she understood the principle of femme fatale and had a deep understanding of it. After the emperor's concubine selection, Lan Huixin's name would definitely spread throughout the central region and the southern region. For such a delicate and weak beauty like her, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens if she wanted to return to the Long Heaven region alone. There were countless people with evil intentions who wanted to do dirty things to her. If she really left alone, she would be kidnapped by evil people before she could leave the central region. Seeing that Yunyao was silent, Lan Huixin continued, "Elder sister Yun, our Long Heaven region is quite poor and backward among the 9 regions. Before I came to participate in the emperor's concubine selection, the region lord and the elders of my sect had high hopes for me and asked me to become a heavenly concubine. Only when I become a heavenly concubine can the Long Heaven region get the support of the emperor and the imperial court and prosper. So, before I came to the central region, the region lord and the elders of my sect forced me to train day and night for several months just to win the favor of the emperor. Now that I failed to complete the task, I don't have the face to return to the Long Heaven region and I don't dare to go back to face the region lord and the elders of my sect. I don't know how they will punish me." Lan Huixin's tone was very gloomy and full of fear and anxiety, which made people sympathize with her. Yunyao deeply sympathized with her words and could understand her mood. She couldn't help but nod and say, "When I was in the heavenly stellar region, the sect masters of the various sects also treated me like that. They were eager for me to become a heavenly concubine and bring prosperity to the heavenly stellar region. Those people sacrificed the happiness of others for their own selfish interests. They are really abominable." Lan Huixin nodded, but then shook her head and said with a miserable expression, "Yes, those people are indeed abominable. But I'm different from you, elder sister Yun. You were born in a noble and ancient family. Even if you don't become a heavenly concubine, you're still the Yun family's legitimate daughter, the princess of the monarch mansion, a first-class noble figure in the continent. But I'm as lowly as a weed on the side of the road. Even a young master of the city lord's family can bully me at will." Speaking of the sad part, Lan Huixin couldn't help but burst into tears and was heartbroken. Yunyao was a bit emotional, but there was nothing she could do. Everyone had their own fate. Who could change it? Lan Huixin pinched her sleeves and hesitated for a while. Then, she mustered her courage and said, "Elder sister Yun, there's no place for me in the central region now. Although the Long Heaven region is my sect and hometown, I can't return to my home." Chapter 557. Originally, Lan Huixin was such a beautiful woman, and she was also the #1 young genius in the Long Heaven domain. Even if she did not become a heavenly consort, she was still a top genius beauty who could make all the major forces of the human race scramble for her, and she was admired and pursued by countless young talents. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao did not expect that she would put down her dignity and follow Yunyao to seek protection. Yunyao was stunned, and for a moment, she did not know whether to agree or refuse. Ji Tianqing frowned and quickly reminded Yunyao with his holy sense, "Yao Yao, we are in a dangerous situation now, and we can't even protect ourselves. How can we protect her? If we take her with us, not only will it be inconvenient, but it will also cause unnecessary trouble." Ji Tianqing was not afraid of trouble, but there was no need to find trouble for an irrelevant person. He had nothing to do with Lan Huixin, and it was already a moral act to save her. Yunyao certainly understood this, so she frowned and thought about it. Lan Huixin was indeed a beautiful woman with a pure heart. Seeing Yunyao remain silent, she guessed that she was hesitating. So, Lan Huixin cried with a sad face and begged pitifully, "Sister Yun, I know my request is a little too much, but I really have no way out. If Big Sister Yun disdains my lowly status, I'm willing to be your servant girl and serve you by your side. I don't have any other requests. I just want to stay by your side and use your name to intimidate those evil people. Lan Huixin pulled Yun Yao's sleeves with both hands and begged with tears running down her face. She almost knelt down on the spot. Now that things had come to this, how could Yun Yao refuse? She was a person who looked as cold as ice on the surface, but was actually a kind person. In the face of Lan Huixin's humble begging, she could not and did not have the heart to refuse. So, Yun Yao reached out to hold Lan Huixin's arms, helped her up, and comforted her softly. Miss Lan, you don't have to do this. I promise you. You don't have to be my maidservant. In the future, you can stay by my side and we can call each other sisters. After getting Yun Yao's permission, Lan Huixin's tears turned into smiles. Her pretty face was filled with excitement as she hurriedly bowed and thanked her. This little sister has no way to repay Big Sister Yun's kindness in taking me in. I can only remember it in my heart and repay it slowly. Yun Yao helped her up, indicating that she didn't need to be so polite, and comforted her. Ji Tianqing stood to the side and watched silently. His expression was calm, and he did not interrupt. He vaguely felt that something was wrong. Lan Huixin was the #1 genius of the Long Heaven domain, a proud daughter of heaven. She shouldn't be so weak. However, he couldn't be too heartless and cruelly reject Lan Huixin. Moreover, Lan Huixin was begging Yun Yao, not him. How could he refuse on behalf of Yun Yao? Now that things had come to this, he could only wait and see. At this time, Yun Yao said, "All right, we can't stay here for long. Let's go back to Liantian City first." Lan Huixin naturally nodded and said cleverly, "I'll follow Big Sister Yun's arrangement." Then, Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Lan Huixin turned around and left the mountain peak, rushing back to Liantian City. After half an hour, the three of them returned to Yunlan's courtyard. Yun Yao arranged for Lan Huixin to stay in a quiet and secluded small courtyard for her to rest for the time being. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or Yun Yao's intention, but the small courtyard where Lan Huixin stayed was right next to Ji Tianqing's residence. In the fresh and elegant room, Lan Huixin sat alone in front of the dressing table and stared at herself in the bronze mirror. At this time, she no longer looked weak and weeping like before. Her face was calm and indifferent, and her eyes showed that she was pondering. She thought to herself, although I don't know why the Son of Heaven chose Suan as his heavenly consort. However, who doesn't know that the person the Son of Heaven truly loves is Yun Yao? I definitely won't give up. As long as I stay by Yun Yao's side, I'll have a chance to come into contact with the Son of Heaven. In the long run, perhaps I'll be able to attract the Son of Heaven's attention and make him have a good impression of me. Then, I'll still have a chance. When she thought of this, the corners of Lan Huixin's mouth curled up into a smile. In Liantian City, inside the luxurious and vast city lord's mansion. Fourth young Master Qin returned to the mansion covered in blood, instantly scaring the group of guards out of their wits. When everyone saw that his head was swollen like a pig's head and that his body was covered in blood, they immediately swarmed over and surrounded him. Someone asked him about his condition with a face full of fear, someone hurriedly checked on his injuries, and someone hurriedly reported the news to the city lord, informing the city lord's mansion's apothecary to treat fourth young Master Qin's injuries. A large group of guards, servants, and maidservants anxiously busied themselves, causing a huge commotion in the mansion. After half an hour, 2 apothecaries from the city lord's mansion temporarily treated fourth young Master Qin's injuries. At the same time, the news of fourth young Master Qin's family jewels being destroyed spread like wildfire in the city lord's mansion. Fourth young Master Qin didn't rest. Bearing with the humiliation and pain, he limped to city lord Qin Zheng's study room, intending to complain to Qin Zheng. However, there were 2 bodyguards guarding the door of the study and they stopped him. "Fourth young master, please wait." "Fourth young master, the city lord is having a private discussion with a distinguished guest in the study room. It's inconvenient to disturb him. 2 guards wearing black armor stretched out their hands and blocked 4th young Master Qin's path. 4th young Master Qin immediately flew into a rage. As he cursed, he lifted his leg to kick the 2 guards. Bastard! Do you want to die? I've been severely injured by someone, and I need to report this to my father. Why aren't you guys scram? However, just as he was about to lift his leg, a tearing pain came from his abdomen, causing his face to turn pale and distorted as he sucked in a breath of cold air. Seeing that 4th young Master Qin's head was swollen like a pig's head and in unbearable pain, the 2 guards were stunned. They didn't understand what had happened. 4th young Master Qin couldn't be bothered to explain to them. He reached out to push open the door of the study room and limped in. Father! You must seek justice for me. Just now, an adulterous couple humiliated me and severely injured me. They even destroyed my family jewels. As soon as he entered the study room, 4th young Master Qin shouted with grief and indignation. His tone was filled with rage and grievance. In the exquisite and elegant study room, 2 dignified men were discussing something. Behind the large study table sat a young man wearing a golden robe and a 7-star purple gold crown. This man was tall and burly, and his face was handsome and resolute. He exuded a powerful and noble aura. His red phoenix eyes, which were as bright as the stars, contained an indescribable power and dominance that made people not dare to look at him directly. The other person was a middle-aged man wearing a purple robe. He wore a feathered crown on his head and a jade belt on his waist. He had a dignified aura. However, compared to the golden-robed young man's aura, he was far inferior. The middle-aged man stood respectfully beside the study table and was reporting something to the golden-robed young man. His tone was low and solemn. The 2 of them were discussing something important when the study room door was suddenly pushed open. Their conversation was immediately interrupted. The middle-aged man turned his head subconsciously and glared at 4th young Master Qin, who had barged into the study room. He shouted in a deep voice, "Feng, don't be presumptuous." After saying that, he looked at the golden-robed young man in fear and trepidation. He quickly bowed and apologized. "Third Prince, my son is ignorant and didn't mean to offend you. Please be magnanimous." The golden-robed young man raised his eyebrows but didn't show any anger. He glanced at 4th young Master Qin indifferently and looked back at the letter in his hand. The middle-aged man secretly heaved a sigh of relief and quickly scolded 4th young Master Qin in a deep voice, "Feng, what are you waiting for? Come and greet His Highness the 3rd Prince." Chapter 558. Although Qin Feng bowed respectfully, the 3rd Prince did not even look at him. Obviously, the 3rd Prince did not put this hedonistic young ruffian in his eyes and was too lazy to pay attention to him. He still looked down at the letter in his hand and said indifferently, "Qin Zheng, deal with your family affairs first, then we can talk about business." Qin Zheng quickly saluted and said respectfully, "I'll follow the 3rd Prince's order." After saying that, he turned to look at Qin Feng and asked with a dignified expression, "Feng, what happened? Who was so arrogant and dared to attack you in Liantian City and beat you up like this?" Seeing his father's anxious expression and worried eyes, Qin Feng immediately calmed down and had confidence. Without hesitation, he made up a lie and said, "Father, today I brought 4 of my trusted guards to the mine in the boundless mountains to supervise. Who knew that not long after I entered the vast mountains, I met a young man and a young woman. The 2 of them seemed to have an extraordinary status and were very powerful. They had an arrogant attitude. After they saw me, the white-robed young man attacked me without any explanation and killed my 4 guards in one move. I told them my identity and used your name, but the white-robed young man not only did not show any mercy but also severely injured me and destroyed my manhood. What? Hearing this, Qin Zheng's expression changed drastically, revealing a furious expression. Although he had many children, Qin Feng was not the only one who could carry on the family line. But the other party knew that Qin Feng was his son and still dared to destroy Qin Feng. This was simply the biggest insult and provocation to him. Seeing that his father was furious, Qin Feng continued, "Father, that white-robed young man is not only ruthless and vicious, but also extremely arrogant and conceited. He even said that the son of the Liantian city lord was nothing. Even if the Liantian city lord came, he would still beat him up." Qin Zheng became even more furious. Blue veins bulged on his forehead and his eyes were filled with anger. Preposterous. This is simply too much. Feng, that damn bastard, did he leave his name? Where did he come from? How dare he humiliate a descendant of the Qin clan like this? Qin Feng thinks for a while and says with a frown, "Father, that white-robed young man reported his name and said he came from the monarch mansion. I think his name is Ji Tianqing." The monarch mansion? Qin Zheng's body shook, and his expression froze. His expression changed rapidly. He was filled with anger and killing intent, but he was scared into silence by the words monarch mansion. At the same time, the third prince, who had been looking down at the letter, suddenly frowned. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Ji Tianqing? He muttered to himself as his lips curled into a cold smile. Qin Feng saw the sudden change in his father's expression and his hesitant look. He asked doubtfully, "Father, is that little bastard's background very big? Could it be that he is a prince from one of the royal palaces?" Hearing this, Qin Zheng almost vomited blood from anger. He fiercely glared at Qin Feng and scolded, "Bastard! You usually only know how to indulge in debauchery, ignorant and incompetent, but you're actually so stupid. Do you think the monarch mansion is an ordinary royal palace? That is the holy land of martial arts in Zhongzhou City, the monarch mansion where the princes of various clans gather." Qin Feng immediately came to his senses and said with a face full of horror, "Prince? That monarch mansion? It's over. That little bastard must be the prince of the monarch mansion. No wonder his strength is so terrifying." After understanding Ji Tianqing's identity, Qin Feng was instantly filled with fear. His face was gloomy as if he had lost his parents. Although he was the son of the Liantian city governor, he was like a mud worm in the ground and an eagle in the sky when compared to the noble prince. Even his father, Qin Zheng, had to be humble and respectful in front of the prince. However, the piercing pain in his abdomen made his chest burn with anger. His eyes became ferocious and resentful. He unwillingly asked Qin Zheng, "Father, so what if he is the prince? He was so arrogant that he even cut off my roots. Could it be that we're still going to endure such humiliation and hatred? No. I can't accept this, I can't take this lying down. No one has ever dared to humiliate me like this." Qin Zheng frowned and said in a low voice, "Feng, don't be impatient. This is not a trivial matter. Let me think about it. That guy called Ji Tianqing is in the limelight recently and is very troublesome, but don't worry, even if he is the noble prince, he shouldn't humiliate my son like this. This is a great humiliation, I will never let it go." After getting Qin Zheng's promise, Qin Feng felt a little relieved and nodded silently. Qin Zheng waved his hand and said to him, "Feng, you can leave first. Don't worry about your injuries. I still have to discuss important matters with the third prince." "As you command." Qin Feng hurriedly bows and salutes the third prince. He then turns around and leaves the study. After he left, the study became quiet. At this time, the third prince put down the letter in his hand and looked at Qin Zheng with a faint smile. He said in a playful tone, "Qin Zheng, your forbearance really surprised me." Qin Zheng's old face suddenly turned red and he said awkwardly, "My son is naughty and mischievous. It's not that I don't want to avenge my son, but the imperial residence is too sacred. Those princes are noble and unparalleled. How could I dare to do anything to them? The third prince frowned and said in a cold voice, Ji Tianqing, that boy, can't represent the imperial residence. This boy comes from the southern Tianshan region and is just a lowly commoner. He has just entered the imperial residence and has no background or foundation. If he is in Zhongzhou city, he can act like a tyrant with the name of the imperial residence. But this is Liantian city, under the foot of my clan's imperial court. It is your territory. How can you allow him to be so arrogant? Hearing the third prince's words, Qin Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He understood what the third prince meant. He thought to himself, that's right. I was so angry just now that I neglected this point. That Ji Tianqing is a nobody. Not long ago, he defeated the emperor in front of everyone, so he was qualified to enter the imperial residence. Ji Tianqing made the emperor lose face and damaged the reputation of the imperial court. No wonder the third prince is so hostile to him. In this case, the third prince supports me to avenge Feng Er. Thinking of this, Qin Zheng bowed to the third prince and asked respectfully, Third prince, please advise me. The third prince looked at him indifferently and said slowly, no one dares to fight against the imperial residence, and no one dares to kill the crown prince openly. However, in your territory, you are in the right. Even if you secretly get rid of that prince, as long as you don't leave any evidence, the imperial residence can't do anything to you. Of course, this is between you and Ji Tianqing. Whether you want to avenge him or not is up to you. As for what to do, you can slowly think about it. Chapter 559. After the third prince finished speaking, he stopped talking about this matter and got up to leave the study. Qin Zheng understood what he meant and had a plan in his heart. He respectfully sent the third prince out of the city lord's mansion. After the third prince left, Qin Zheng returned to the study and sat in front of the table. He frowned and fell into deep thought. After thinking for a moment, he said in a low voice, Come in. One of the two guards guarding outside the study immediately walked into the study and came before Qin Zheng. He cupped his hands and bowed, Sir City Lord, please give your orders. Qin Zheng ordered in a dignified voice, immediately send someone to investigate Ji Tianqing's whereabouts. Find out where he is as soon as possible. Yes, sir. The guard did not say much. He quickly turned and walked out of the study to carry out the order. Only Qin Zheng was left in the study and it suddenly became silent. He frowned and his eyes flashed with cold killing intent. He muttered to himself, he's just a commoner without an aristocratic background. So what if he entered the emperor's mansion? Does he really think that after becoming the emperor, he is unparalleled and no one dares to offend him? This person dares to offend the emperor and the imperial court. He really doesn't know what's good for him. Since the third prince ordered me to act, I must get rid of this guy. At that time, not only can I avenge Feng Er, but I can also ask for credit from the third prince and the imperial court. My status will definitely rise by a lot. As long as I do it well and the imperial court protects me, even the emperor's mansion can't do anything to me. Humph. Speaking of this, Qin Zheng coldly snorted and secretly clenched his fists. Half a day passed quickly. Under the dark night, Qin Zheng sat in the dimly lit study and quietly waited for news. After a while, a guard in black armor entered the study and came in front of him. He bowed and reporting to the city lord, I have the results of the investigation. Qin Zheng raised his eyebrows and quickly said, What's the situation? Speak quickly. The black-armored guard said in a low voice, reporting to the city lord, that kid is still in the city. He is living in the Yunlan courtyard. Yunlan courtyard? Qin Zheng frowned and said in a serious tone, that is the property of Yunling Palace. The Yunlan courtyard must be guarded by a large number of experts. I didn't expect that kid to be related to the Yun family and hide in the misty cloud courtyard. Qin Zheng's expression was somewhat gloomy as he ordered in a deep voice, "Keep an eye on the misty cloud courtyard day and night. You must keep a close eye on that brat. I don't believe that he'll continue to hide in the misty cloud courtyard. As long as he dares to leave that courtyard, I'll turn him into ashes." The black-armored guard immediately cupped his fists and bowed. Then, he turned around to leave. But at this moment, another black-armored guard strode into the study and quickly walked in front of Qin Zheng. He respectfully reporting to the city lord, "That kid just left the misty cloud courtyard." Suddenly hearing this news, Qin Zheng was startled and a cold smile appeared on his face. Humph! This damned bastard, how could he be so arrogant and confident? Since he has personally delivered such an excellent opportunity to me, how can I let him go? After sneering, Qin Zheng immediately ordered, "Immediately notify the few revered elders of the revered hall and have them begin to act immediately. Tonight, I want to see Ji Tianqing's head." The two black-armored guards cupped their fists and accepted the order. They immediately left the study to pass on the order. Qin Zheng stared at the dark night outside the window and sneered with resentment. "Humph, even if that kid is a genius prince, he's definitely not a match for a few Sky Origin Realm revered elders. After tonight, I'll have a meteoric rise and become the third prince's trusted aide." As he spoke, his eyes revealed a strong sense of expectation. In Liantian City, under the dark night, the street lights were sparse. The bustling street during the day had now fallen into a cold and silent state. The entire Liantian City was in a deep sleep, quiet and serene. Ji Tianqing walked alone on the street. His pace was as fast as the wind, and his figure was faintly discernible in the night. At this moment, he was rushing to the Great Fortune Inn in the city, preparing to look for Ling Yixiong. Yun Luo was still secretly investigating Ling Yixiong's background, but there were no results yet. Ji Tianqing wanted to meet Ling Yixiong personally and test him again. In addition, he left Yunlan courtyard alone in the middle of the night with the intention of luring the snake out of its hole. On the surface, it looked like he was rushing through the city empty-handed and defenseless. However, in reality, Ji Tianqing secretly released his spiritual sense to cover an area of 300 meters around him, monitoring the movements in the dark at all times. After a quarter of an hour, he was passing by a dark bluestone road. On both sides of the road were lush forests, filled with towering trees. In the depths of the forest, a few simple and unadorned houses could be faintly seen. If it was during the day, the houses on both sides of the road could be called a quiet and secluded place. However, in this dark night, the surroundings of the road were dark and deathly silent, appearing somewhat eerie and terrifying. Ji Tianqing was shuttling through the dark night when he suddenly stopped and stood in the middle of the bluestone road. He looked at the dark night in front of him and shouted with an expressionless face, "Since you followed me here, why don't you show yourself?" His cold voice echoed in the night, containing a hint of contempt and mockery. However, the surroundings were quiet, and not a single figure appeared within 1,000 meters. Ji Tianqing frowned, the corners of his mouth curling into a sneer as he said, "Cowardly scoundrel, don't you find it suffocating to hide underground?" As soon as his voice fell, he suddenly raised his right foot, channeled all of his power, and fiercely stomped on the ground. Bang! In the midst of a dull and loud noise, a majestic and mighty force fiercely blasted into the ground. The flat ground within 100 meters suddenly swelled like a wave, emitting a dull rumbling sound. The flat and sturdy bluestone road was also shaken to the point that it twisted and folded, splitting into a dozen or so wide gullies. In the next moment, several figures dressed in black flew out from the cracks in the ground and landed around Ji Tianqing with a swish. Ji Tianqing scanned the area with his spiritual sense and saw that there were 5 assassins in black. They were scattered in all directions and had surrounded him. The 5 assassins in black were all different in body shape and temperament. There were old and young, male and female. However, they all had one thing in common, which was that they were all at the first level of Sky Origin stage. Two of the stronger ones were a tall and sturdy man and a skinny woman. They were both at the second level of Sky Origin stage. Ji Tianqing was surrounded by the 5 Sky Origin stage cultivators, but he didn't change his expression at all. He was still calm and composed. He even looked around and glanced at the 5 Sky Origin stage cultivators, the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer. Hee, your master is really looking down on me. How dare trash like you try to assassinate me? Chapter 560. Among the 5 Sky Origin stage cultivators, the leader of the group could not hold back his anger and spoke first. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open and shouted, "You little bastard! You are really arrogant. How dare you do whatever you want in Liantian City just because you are the crown prince? Tonight, I will kill you for the good of the people." Ji Tianqing frowned and sneered, "Ha, ha. Is this the reason why you want to assassinate me? How can you come up with such a lame excuse? I admire you." The burly man's face immediately turned red, and he was filled with embarrassment. Luckily, he was wearing a veil, so no one could see his expression in the dark night. The skinny woman beside him stared at him coldly and then shouted at Ji Tianqing, "You little bastard. Even if you have a sharp tongue, it is useless. You have offended someone you shouldn't have. Nobody can save you tonight. You are going to die." Ji Tianqing frowned slightly. He thought to himself doubtfully, the 2 assassins who tried to assassinate me and Ling Yichuan were both in the 3rd and 4th layer of Sky Origin stage. Tonight, the 5 assassins who came to kill me were much weaker than before. It seems that these 2 groups of assassins are not from the same force. Otherwise, they are too stupid. Thinking of this, he vaguely had an answer. He stared at the skinny woman and sneered, "If you can kill with your mouth, you are indeed powerful. However, if this is all the Liantian city governor's lackey can do, it is too disappointing." The assassins in black were all shocked. There was a subtle change in their eyes. Although they did not say anything, Ji Tianqing could feel that something was wrong with them. He knew that his test had worked. At this moment, the skinny woman frowned and shouted angrily, "What Liantian city governor? I don't know what you are talking about. Cut the crap and hand over your life." The skinny woman obviously did not want to talk to Ji Tianqing. She immediately took out a long and narrow black scimitar and rushed toward him. Swish swish. The emaciated woman brandished her long and narrow curved blade and slashed out 2 10-meter-long golden blade lights toward Ji Tianqing. The other 4 black-clothed assassins immediately attacked as well. They brandished their swords and sabers, unleashing their powerful killing moves and besieging him. Ji Tianqing was instantly surrounded by dozens of sword and saber lights. The dazzling quintessence light illuminated the night sky for several hundred meters. Sharp saber chi and sword intent burst forth, kicking up a strong wind. A golden light flashed behind Ji Tianqing, and a pair of golden wings appeared. The pitch-black black dragon sword also appeared in his left hand out of thin air. He condensed his majestic true essence into a celestial dipper shield to protect himself. 9 heavens dragon soars. With a light shout, he brazenly pulled out the black dragon sword and fiercely slashed at a black-clothed old man on the left. Among the 5 assassins, the big man and the skinny woman were the most powerful. They were both at the 2nd level of Sky Origin stage. The other 3 were all at the 1st level of Sky Origin stage, so they were his first targets. Roar! When the black dragon sword was unsheathed, a 30-meter-long frost divine dragon suddenly appeared in the night sky, letting out a deafening dragon roar. The frost divine dragon carried the power to destroy everything and emitted a bone-chilling coldness. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, tearing apart the night sky. It shattered several saber lights and sword lights, and then slashed at the black-clothed old man. Boom! With a muffled sound, blood spurted out and pieces of flesh flew everywhere. The black-clothed old man at the first level of Sky Origin stage was smashed into pieces by the Frost Divine Dragon. He hadn't said a word since he showed up. He didn't even have the time to scream before he was smashed into pieces of flesh and blood on the ground. He was probably the most tragic Sky Origin stage cultivator in history. After the Frost Divine Dragon killed the black-clothed old man, it created a 10-meter-wide crater on the ground. Dust flew up into the air, and then it slowly dissipated. The other 4 assassins saw how the black-clothed old man was killed within seconds. They were all shocked, and their eyes were wide open in horror. At the same time, over a dozen huge saber lights and sword shadows drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. Bang! 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 With a series of muffled noises, over a dozen violent saber lights and sword shadows were all blocked by Ji Tianqing's Big Dipper shield and golden wings. The violent energy mixed with the brilliance of true essence formed a colorful shockwave that spread out in all directions, sweeping across a radius of several hundred meters. The bluestone road was shattered by the blast wave. The ground was shaking violently, and dense cracks appeared on the ground. Even many of the towering trees in the surroundings were crushed into wood shavings and scattered among the ruins. What happened next made the 4 assassins even more terrified. Ji Tianqing was completely unscathed. He flew out of the chaotic multicolored light and into the night sky. He opened his golden wings, held the black dragon sword in his hand, and stepped on the night sky 100 meters high, emitting a domineering aura. He looked down at the 4 black-clothed assassins and waved the black dragon sword in his right hand. He slashed out an earth-shattering sword aura towards the burly man and the skinny woman. Water split. The 50-meter-long golden sword locked on the burly man and the skinny woman's aura and slashed down from the sky. The 2 assassins' faces changed drastically. They immediately waved their saber and sword to perform their unique skills to block the slash of the giant sword. Bang! 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 The saber lights and sword shadows collided with the giant golden sword, creating a series of loud noises, shaking the sky and the earth. The dazzling brilliance lit up the night sky as if it was daytime. In the loud noises, the burly man and the skinny woman were both blown away. Blood rained down from their bodies, and they fell into the ruins 100 meters away. At this time, Ji Tianqing extended his left hand again. Dazzling red fire gushed out, forming a 30-meter-long fiery sword light, and slashed at another assassin. Red Dragon Flash. The fire around the huge flaming sword condensed into a red flaming dragon. It burst out of violent power and hit the first-level Sky Origin stage assassin in black within a second. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the black-clothed assassin's true essence shield was shattered. His entire body was smashed into pieces under the attack of the red dragon. Even the pieces of his body had been burned into pitch-black charcoal by the crimson flames and scattered among the ruins. Another Sky Origin stage cultivator was killed by Ji Tianqing within seconds. In a blink of an eye, 2 of the 5 assassins were killed, and the other 2 were severely wounded. The last level 1 Sky Origin stage assassin was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly turned around and ran away. Ji Tianqing stepped on the night sky, coldly staring at the assassin's back. He sneered, "Since you are here, you have to stay." After that, he fully operated his martial arts and released 2 30-meter-long giant sword lights, slashing at the assassin from both sides. Wind Thunder Strike. The 2 giant sword lights cut through the night sky and arrived behind the assassin in a blink of an eye. They attacked from both sides, forming a shocking thunderbolt and slashing down. Boom! Chapter 561. Within a dozen breaths, 3 of the 5 Sky Origin stage cultivators were killed. Although the 3 of them were only at the first level of Sky Origin stage. However, they were all killed within seconds. They couldn't even fight back. The strong man and the skinny woman were both badly injured. Their black robes were soaked with blood. They struggled for a while and finally crawled out from the ruins. However, they didn't dare to attack Ji Tianqing anymore. The 2 of them had long been frightened by Ji Tianqing's terrifying divine might. Their eyes were filled with terror, and their bodies were drenched in cold sweat. How is this possible? This man is at least at the 4th or 5th level of Sky Origin stage. Didn't he just become a crown prince? How can he be so powerful? Damn it! Qinzheng messed me up. Damn it! They looked up at Ji Tianqing in the night sky. Their eyes were filled with fear. The last bit of fighting spirit in their hearts was gone. They wanted to run away. The 2 of them had the thought of running away almost at the same time. They looked at each other tacitly and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. They didn't hesitate at all. They ran to the east and the west. Whoosh! Whoosh! They both burst out powerful spiritual energy. Colorful flames were burning on their bodies. They turned into 2 streams of light and flew away in the night sky. It would be difficult for anyone to make a decision in such a situation. No matter which one he chased, the other one would definitely run away. The strong man and the skinny woman both thought that one of them would be able to escape. However, they had no idea how powerful Ji Tianqing's strength and methods were. He coldly stared at the skinny woman who was running to the west. He raised his left hand without hesitation and activated the horrifying red flame fire. The red flame fire poured out from his left hand, which looked like it was made of lava. It turned into a giant flaming hand and slapped on the skinny woman. Sky-burning palm. The giant flaming hand covered the sky. It flashed across the night sky like lightning and caught up with the skinny woman within seconds. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom, the giant flaming palm blasted the frail woman into smithereens on the spot and blasted a huge crater with a radius of 100 meters in the ground. The raging scarlet flame true fire surged and flooded the area within a radius of several hundred meters, turning the area into a sea of fire. In the sea of fire, the lush forest disappeared, and the towering trees turned into ashes. As for the fragments of the emaciated woman's corpse, they were naturally burned to ashes by the scarlet flame true fire. The dark night sky was illuminated, and the flames could be seen within a radius of 100 miles. At the same time, Ji Tianqing had already chased towards the east and began to hunt down the burly man. After he used the burning sky palm, he didn't even need to look at the result to know that the thin and weak woman's fate was certain death. Shua! Ji Tianqing cut through the night sky as fast as lightning, and caught up with the burly man in just a few breaths. Scarlet Dragon Flash! He shouted in a cold tone and waved his hand to release a 10-meter-long flaming sword light toward the burly man. The scarlet flame lingering on the sword light turned into a flame divine dragon. It instantly crossed the night sky 100 meters away and fiercely blasted the burly man. Bang! With a dull loud sound, the burly man's true essence shield was smashed into pieces. His whole body was also thrown out and fell forward powerlessly. One of his arms was cut off by the sword light, and a bowl-sized hole was pierced through his chest and abdomen. Blood kept coming out of the wound, turning him into a bloody man. He was still falling in mid-air, but his consciousness was already blurred and he fell into a coma. With a dull thud, the burly man fell to the ground and smashed into a bush. Immediately afterward, Ji Tianqing flew over like a stream of light and landed in front of him. Ji Tianqing used his spiritual sense to check his injuries. He was relieved to see that he was only seriously injured and unconscious and didn't die on the spot. It's good that you're not dead. Indeed, if he wanted to kill the burly man, he could directly use the sword of judgment to kill him. But he wanted to keep him alive for interrogation, so he held back just now. Ji Tianqing stretched out his hand to pick up the seriously injured and unconscious burly man. Like picking up a chicken, he flew out of the jungle in a flash and quickly left. The earth-shattering battle just now had already alarmed the people and martial artists in the surroundings. Lights were lit up in all directions. Some martial artists were shouting, and some of the bolder experts quickly rushed over to see what was going on. However, when those martial artists arrived, they only saw the devastated ruins, and the ground was full of gullies and deep pits. After a quarter of an hour, Ji Tianqing carried the unconscious burly man and entered a deserted house. Under the dark night, the house was dead silent and exuded a terrifying chill. The house was old and dilapidated, and the yard was full of weeds that were half a man's height. There were dilapidated walls and broken door frames covered with spider webs. Ji Tianqing threw the burly man on the grass, waved his hand, and injected a stream of true essence into the burly man's body. The burly man's injuries were suppressed and he immediately woke up. However, his injuries were too serious. Even if his consciousness was awake, his body was lying on the ground and he couldn't move, let alone escape. He opened his eyes and saw Ji Tianqing looking down at him from above. His expression was cold and his eyes were indifferent. The burly man was shocked and showed a frightened look. He subconsciously wanted to struggle. Ji Tianqing stepped on his chest and pressed him to the ground, unable to move. He asked in a cold voice, "Tell me your identity. Who ordered you to assassinate me?" The burly man clenched his teeth tightly. He had a rather unyielding attitude and was unwilling to let go of the matter. Ji Tianqing wasn't angry, nor was he in a hurry. With an expressionless face, he said, "You must think that regardless of whether you speak or not, you'll definitely die. That's why you'd rather die than speak." The burly man glared at him and roared in a hoarse voice, "Isn't that the case? I admit that I've lost to you. But even if I die, I will never tell you. Give me a quick death." Ji Tianqing's mouth hooked up, revealing a cold smile. His tone was full of pity as he said, "Falling into my hands, do you think your life and death is still in your hands? You can choose to keep your mouth shut, but I will use you to practice a new sword art. I will stab you 990 times, piercing you into a sieve, but every sword will avoid the vital points. I will never let you die." As he spoke, he stretched out his right palm and more than 10 finger-long golden swords appeared in his palm, quickly dancing and spinning. When the burly man heard his cold words and saw his indifferent eyes, he was so scared that his whole body trembled, and a chill ran down his spine. "Ji Tianqing! You bastard! Bastard!" Ji Tianqing didn't talk nonsense. He waved his right hand and shot out more than 10 golden swords. Swish! 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 As the sword light flashed, more than 10 bloody holes immediately appeared on the burly man's right leg, and a large amount of blood spurted out. Under the intense pain, he immediately let out a miserable howl and his whole body twitched. He clenched his teeth and remained silent, breathing heavily for a while. After struggling and hesitating for a while, he opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, you win. I will speak, I will confess everything. My name is Yu Biao, and I joined the Liantian city lord Qin Zheng 8 years ago. Now I am a consecrator of the city lord mansion. The other 4 are consecrators of the city lord mansion like me. Tonight, they received Qin Zheng's order to join forces to kill you and avenge Qin Zheng's 4th son, Qin Feng." Yu Biao couldn't bear the pressure and finally confessed the truth. Chapter 562. After Yu Biao confessed the truth, he closed his eyes and panted heavily. His injuries were too severe and his strength was extremely weak. He could feel his life force draining away quickly. His heart was filled with anxiety and worry. He could not help but raise his head to look at Ji Tianqing. He saw that Ji Tianqing was playing with a piece of dark silver crystal in his left hand. He seemed to be deep in thought. Yu Biao could not help but urge, "Ji Tianqing, I have confessed. Are you still not going to let me go?" Ji Tianqing kept the piece of dark silver crystal and glanced at him indifferently. He sneered, "Let you go? How naive." Yu Biao's expression changed drastically. He shouted furiously, "You bastard! You don't keep your word." "Keep my word?" Ji Tianqing looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. He asked, "Did I say that I would let you go?" Yu Biao was speechless and his heart was dead. Ji Tianqing did not want to waste any more time with him. He waved his hand and a sword light was shot out, cutting off his throat. After a spurt of blood, Yu Biao lost his life force and died on the spot. The group of people who wanted to deal with me hid themselves deeper and were harder to deal with. In comparison, the Liantian city governor's power and methods are nothing to be afraid of. Since that is the case, I will cut the Gordian knot and get rid of the Liantian city governor first. Then, I will focus on dealing with the other group of people. Ji Tianqing thought to himself. He turned around and left the abandoned house, disappearing into the night. After he had crippled Qin Feng, he had expected that the Liantian city governor would take revenge. Therefore, he had asked Yun Yao about the Liantian city governor's situation. According to what Yun Yao knew, the Liantian city governor, Qin Zheng, was mediocre. He was only at the 4th level of sky origin stage among all the castellans in the Central Plains. However, he was loyal to the imperial court. He was good at flattering people. He was only able to secure his position as the Liantian city governor because he had the support of one of the princes. The mayor's mansion was heavily guarded. Not only were there many sky origin great formations, there were also nearly 10 sky origin stage cultivators guarding the mansion. In addition, there were over 1,000 guards in the city lord's mansion. Among them, there were dozens of Yuan Dan experts. It was precisely because Ji Tianqing understood the situation that he wanted to kill his way into the city lord's mansion alone and settle this matter once and for all. Half an hour later, Ji Tianqing arrived outside the city lord's mansion. He did not approach the main gate of the city lord's mansion. Instead, he appeared in the dark forest beside the city lord's mansion. He stood in the dark forest. His figure blended into the night, and his aura became hidden and obscure. 10 meters in front of him was the wall of the city lord's mansion. The wall made of pitch-black boulders was over 6 meters tall and extremely sturdy. An invisible defensive array enveloped the tall walls of the courtyard. If Ji Tianqing wanted to sneak into the Castellan mansion, he would have to break the invisible Tianyuan Grand Array. He stood quietly in the woods, using his spiritual sense to secretly probe the formation, looking for flaws and ways to break it. Time passed by quietly. 2 hours quickly passed. Finally, Ji Tianqing found a flaw in the formation. He waved his hand and shot out rays of true essence brilliance, beginning to crack the defensive array. His movements were neither fast nor slow, and he was very careful. He did not make any noise, nor did he agitate any intense true essence fluctuations. He spent another 2 hours before he managed to crack a crack in the formation. Swoosh! With a flash of light, Ji Tianqing passed through the crack in the formation and quietly entered the city lord's mansion. It was the middle of the night. The city lord's mansion was dimly lit. Most people were either sleeping or cultivating. Team after team of black-armored guards patrolled the mansion according to a fixed schedule and route. Ji Tianqing released his spiritual sense, quietly covering a range of 200 to 300 meters to investigate the situation. Spiritual sense was like an invisible eye. Not only could it see the surrounding situation clearly, but it could also investigate the movements underground. In the night, spiritual sense was far more useful than the eyes. Ji Tianqing used his spiritual sense to investigate the situation in the surroundings, and avoided all the overt and covert sentries and patrolling guards in advance. Not long after, he entered the depths of the city lord's mansion and walked into the palace that the city lord, Qin Zheng, lived in. When he found Qin Zheng was pacing back and forth in the study. Qin Zheng had a serious expression and worry hung between his brows. 2 black armored guards guarded the door to the study, and their auras were icy cold and murderous. Ji Tianqing silently arrived outside the study and attacked without the slightest hesitation, executing a lightning-like attack to brazenly attack the 2 guards. Whoosh whoosh. He waved his hand and struck out 2 golden sword lights that were swift like lightning, shooting towards the throats of the 2 guards. The 2 guards were utterly unprepared. Someone had actually sneaked into the city lord's mansion and even dared attack them. Swoosh. Swoosh. Golden lights appeared abruptly, and the 2 8th-level Origin Core stage guards were instantly pierced through by the sword lights while being caught off guard. The 2 of them stared, their eyes wide open as they stared fixedly at Ji Tianqing, and their eyes revealed terror and astonishment. Their vitality swiftly severed, and they didn't even let out a shrill cry before collapsing onto the ground and becoming 2 corpses. Qin Zheng, who was in the study, was instantly jolted awake by the noise outside the door. His footsteps stopped abruptly, and he immediately turned around to look towards the door. At the same time that he released his spiritual sense to investigate the situation, he shouted out with a low voice. "Who's outside?" What answered him was a muffled bang. Subsequently, the door was kicked open. Ji Tianqing walked with steady footsteps and carried along a murderous aura as he stepped into the study. Qin Zheng's face instantly went grim, and his eyes glared angrily at Ji Tianqing as the aura on his entire body became icy cold. "Who are you?" Ji Tianqing walked into the study and stood still, then he looked at Qin Zheng with a sneer on his face and said with a ridiculing tone. "Didn't you want to kill me to take revenge for Qin Feng? How could you not recognize me?" Suddenly hearing this sentence, Qin Zheng's eyebrows furrowed together, and 2 cold lights flashed in his eyes. "You are Ji Tianqing?" Qin Zheng's tone was filled with disbelief, and a trace of murderous intent surged out from his eyes. "Are you surprised?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, and the true essence in his body invisibly converged, brewing a violent and terrifying power. Qin Zheng quickly suppressed the shock in his heart, and his eyes stared fixedly at Chu Li as he asked in a low voice, "So, the plan of the 5 consecrators under my command, failed?" Ji Tianqing said indifferently, "That's right, they were all killed by me." "That's impossible." Qin Zheng's eyes suddenly widened in anger, revealing a look of deep shock. "Even if you're stronger than them, it's impossible for you to block the joint assassination of 5 people. Whether I can or not, you'll know soon enough." After saying this, Ji Tianqing didn't waste any more words with him, and used all of his power to activate a flaming sword light, and fiercely attacked him. Red Dragon Flash. The flaming sword light that was 10 meters long appeared out of nowhere, almost filling up the study, and instantly drowning Qin Zheng's figure. Boom! In the deafening loud noise, monstrous flames burst out, and the whole study was smashed into pieces. Endless flames and debris mixed together, bursting out in all directions. Chapter 563. Bang! With a muffled sound, Qin Zheng flew over 100 meters away and smashed into the wall of a palace. He smashed a human-shaped dent in the thick and solid palace wall on the spot, and dense cracks appeared all around. The shocking commotion immediately spread throughout the entire city lord's mansion, waking up countless guards and servants. Immediately, shouts could be heard everywhere in the city lord's mansion. Many guards quickly rushed over. Ji Tianqing didn't care. From the moment he stepped into the mansion, he had decided to end this as soon as possible. As the saying goes, to catch bandits, catch the ringleader first. No matter how many powerful cultivators there were in the mansion, as long as he killed Qin Zheng, it would be much easier. However, Qin Zheng was a powerful cultivator of Sky Origin stage after all. He had been prepared for this. When Ji Tianqing used the Red Dragon Flash, he had used all his power to form the Big Dipper's shield. Although he was blown away and looked miserable, the Big Dipper's shield had blocked most of his power. However, his Celestial Dipper's shield blocked most of the power, and he only suffered minor injuries. Swoosh! Qin Zheng's body was glowing with colorful lights. He rushed out from the ruins in a flash. Ji Tianqing! You damned little bastard! Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, I'll definitely kill you tonight. Prepare to die. Qin Zheng was furious. He roared with a ferocious face. His body turned into a stream of light and flew up to the sky. He looked down at Ji Tianqing from above. He was so angry that his hair and beard were all standing up. His body was emitting a violent aura that made his robe flutter. Ji Tianqing stood above the ruins and looked at Qin Zheng coldly. You are at Sky Origin stage after all. You do have some skills. However, I wonder how many attacks you can take from me. As he spoke, he unleashed his powerful qi. His body was glowing with golden flames. White Tiger Divine Sword. Ji Tianqing let out a low growl. His body merged with the golden flames and turned into a giant golden sword that was more than 100 feet long. Swoosh! The huge golden sword cut through the night sky, carrying with it an extremely violent killing intent as it ruthlessly slammed towards Qin Zheng in the night sky. The golden flames around the giant sword condensed into the shadow of a white tiger that was as huge as a mountain. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, revealing a murderous intent that could shake the heavens and the earth. In the blink of an eye, the white tiger's sacred sword arrived in front of Qin Zheng. Overflowing golden flames engulfed his figure. Qin Zheng's expression immediately changed, and his eyes became extremely solemn. At the critical moment, he knew that his Celestial Dipper shield would not be able to block the white tiger's sacred sword, so he took out a pearl that was as black as ink without hesitation. Night release of flowing light, black water wall. Qin Zheng shouted in a low voice as he used some kind of secret technique to inject his majestic true essence into the black pearl. Suddenly, the egg-sized black ball released a black water curtain, which condensed into a black water barrier, blocking in front of him. Almost at the same time the black water barrier was formed, the white tiger's sacred sword had already arrived and ruthlessly smashed into the black water barrier. Boom! The white tiger's sacred sword and the black water barrier collided and exploded with a dull sound. In the blink of an eye, the black water barrier collapsed and shattered, turning into a boundless black rain that poured down in torrents on the city lord's mansion. The flames around the white tiger's sacred sword were also completely extinguished, and its radiance dimmed by a lot. Although the black water barrier was shattered, the power of the white tiger's sacred sword was reduced by 60%. When the white tiger's sacred sword pierced Qin Zheng and sent him flying, his internal organs were only injured, and he was not seriously injured. Qin Zheng's figure cut through the night and crashed into a house with a plop, smashing 2 houses on the spot and turning them into ruins. After the white tiger's sacred sword dissipated, Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. Just as he was about to chase after Qin Zheng, more than 30 black-armored guards rushed out from all directions. Many of the guards held swords and sabers, and their bodies were filled with killing intent. In the blink of an eye, they surrounded him. Kill! There's an assassin! Protect the city lord! We can't let this person escape, kill him! The 30-plus guards let out furious roars as they desperately launched a besiegement. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned, and a cold light flashed within his eyes. Qin Zheng, this bastard, actually has a treasure to protect him. I must deal with him as soon as possible. If I alarm the various forces in the city, I'm afraid it won't end well. He wasn't worried about the forces of the city lord's estate, but there were many emperors, members of various large forces, and aristocratic families living in Sky City, and the situation was extremely complicated. Only by ending the battle as soon as possible could he smoothly resolve the grudges. Thus, Ji Tianqing executed the fifth form of the Flying Star Sword technique without the slightest hesitation. Shatter the mountain and river. He waved his hands and made profound and unfathomable gestures, and his figure teleported and flashed in the night sky as he ceaselessly released numerous dazzling sword lights that shot towards the surroundings. Swoosh! 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 The area within a 100-meter radius was enveloped by the dense sword lights, and it became dazzling and extremely chaotic. The 30-plus guards were immediately enveloped by the boundless sword lights, and their figures were drowned. These people were all Origin Core experts, and there were more than 20 of them whose strength was below the 6th level of the Origin Core stage. Only 10 of them had reached the 6th level of the Origin Core stage. When the might of the Shatter the Mountain and River exploded, thousands upon thousands of sword lights exploded at the same time, and a loud explosion that shook the heavens exploded. The area within a 100-meter radius immediately turned into chaos, and it was turbid and chaotic to the extreme. 2 residences and a palace were blasted to the point of collapse, and they became ruins that covered the ground. The 30-plus guards were unable to resist at all, and they were instantly minced into pieces by the sword lights that filled the sky, and they turned into minced meat. Qin Zheng had just crawled out from the ruins and was about to seize the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on Ji Tianqing, but he witnessed this scene with his own eyes. The 2 Heavenly Origin Stage revered elders who had just arrived also saw the scene of the 30-plus guards being killed in an instant. Instantly, the 3 of them were filled with shock, and they revealed an extremely shocked expression. Qin Zheng temporarily forgot to attack, and he looked at Ji Tianqing with a face full of shock, and he roared involuntarily, although he's only at the 2nd level of the Heavenly Origin Stage, his combat strength is comparable to the 5th level of the Heavenly Origin Stage. Is this the strength of an emperor's son? After Ji Tianqing killed the 30-plus guards in an instant, he turned around to look at Qin Zheng in the night sky and glanced at the 2 purple-robed revered elders. He could guess that the 2 purple-robed middle-aged men should be the remaining 2 revered elders in the city governor's estate. Of course, the strength of the 2 revered elders surpassed the 5 revered elders he killed earlier, and they were at the 3rd level of the Heavenly Origin Stage. Before Ji Tianqing could attack again, Qin Zheng and the 2 purple-robed revered elders recovered from their shock and joined forces to launch a joint attack on him. Bastard! Tonight, I'll tear you into pieces. How dare you commit a massacre in the city governor's estate? You've committed a heinous crime. No matter who you are, you'll definitely die tonight. I'll definitely take your head to pay for the innocent souls who died in vain. Qin Zheng and the 2 revered elders roared furiously, and they slashed out sword lights that covered the sky, and they blasted towards Ji Tianqing. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.